system right into the laptop?
I don't know what happened. This is in the wrong spot. This was not here earlier. We were here an hour ago. Allison, are we good? We've seen green. Yes? Okay. Okay.
Jack, thank you so much.
Sure.
You work tremendously hard for the district. I know that you had talked about staff development. I know that the community has been pretty vocal about wanting to be able to help their child. What do we have in place, and can we put these things, I know that everybody wants it on the front page of the website, but is there an easily accessible place where we could put tutorials where parents could help the kids as well?
Absolutely, and that's one of the wonderful things that we love about this Otis platform. There are things that are pre-built in there already for parents, and then we're working to get we just really signed on to this just literally within the last few weeks, and we're waiting to get the parent codes that we can send out, and we'll send that out via school messenger or whatever other means we have, and parents will be able to utilize the code, get into all of that content. So whether it's content that's part of their platform already, or anything that's customized for what we build, for things that are very specific to Sachem, any of those videos we can share with parents, and it goes right into the portal for them to access.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Please, Mr. Baumann.
Chris, are we planning on, is this working? Are we planning on having...
Move closer.
Sorry. Are we planning on having all the teachers maintain a classroom for each class? So if, God forbid, we have to go home?
Teachers are maintaining Google Classrooms for each class.
Please, Mr. Isonia.
Jack, what's the expected life on the Chromebooks, and are we going to start rolling them over as the lease expires? Is that the plan?
Sure. Typically, it's like a 4 to 5 year life cycle. Many districts are adopting a 9 through 12, 5 through 8 kind of a plan. So students get them in 5th grade, they would hold on to them till 8th grade and then recycle them. And then 9th grade, they would get a new one and they would carry that till their senior year. So obviously doing 6 through 12, we'll have 12th graders that'll be leaving. The device will still have, 3 years of life left to it. So we'll be working with Dr. Pelletier to determine a refresh cycle and how we want to do that. And obviously working with Mr. O'Keefe to make that budget fiscally sound and manageable.
Mrs. Pickowitz?
In terms of managing the devices and, keeping the kids off of specific websites that might be dangerous, whether they're in school or at home, and also protecting their identities and their information, what is the district doing in terms of that?
Sure. So regarding the filtering portion, the district is using GoGuardian. So GoGuardian is a web filter solution. It also does provide teacher management tools for them to be able to work with the students during their class times. But the filtering mirrors what we're doing currently in district, and the district does also still maintain its in-house filtering system for all district level computers and things like that. When it comes to any sort of data privacy, we are compliant with data privacy in New York State. Any sort of software or systems that we work with must be vetted through our attorneys. So I work very closely with Matt in Chris's office, and we make sure that every single one of the licenses or products that we work with are either approved by New York State, either through BOCES and the work that they do, or it's approved through our attorneys, and then it does get submitted to the board for sign off. So we do make sure that all of those companies are following all those mandates and requirements for New York State Ed Law 2D with the New York State Parent Bill of Rights and all the Data Security and Privacy Acts.
And that carries through when they're using the devices at home. So do the parents
Correct.
need to worry about uploading or managing their child's device, or is that going to be managed?
It's all
completely while they're
managed, yeah,
home?
it's all managed through the district, and then all of that content is managed through the district's Google console. So any sort of software or whatever that's needed, once we get all the approvals and all the sign-offs that we need to from a legal standpoint, and they get approved by the board, then we would use our console to push those apps and those things to those students' devices. Other than that, there is no way for those students to really be working with apps and things that are outside of that. And our teachers do have GCN, which they use for compliance training about New York State Ed Law 2D. I believe Mrs. Spatafor, the CEO, and our assistant personnel director, she sent that information out even today, I think, about making sure that everyone is trained on New York State data privacy.
And then in terms of our teachers, parents, students need any type of tech support, assistance, whatnot, is there going to be any type of tech support through library or anything like that?
Sure. Our building school communication aides are our first line of defense when it comes to any sort of networking issues or any sort of computer issues. They're the ones that'll be taking care of those warranty or accidental breakage issues as well. And when there's any sort of technical issues, they are our first line of defense. They're an amazing team of people. We have one in each building, two in each high school. As I mentioned before, we're a little short right now. We have some people out for different purposes and a couple of positions we're looking to fill. But they really are an amazing team that helps do all that triage. Whenever there's something that reaches a different level, that moves higher, we then escalate that to an engineer, or we do have some people in our district office that do a lot of the centralized management. And thankfully, the way that the Google system works is all of that is very centrally managed and very easily managed. So this way we can take care of a lot of things centrally for people. And we are working again to look at other ways to support teachers, students, and parents.
Mr. Isonia?
Yeah, Jack, just following up on Sabrina's question. I could see some issues occurring after hours, like, during homework time, 6, 7, 8 o'clock. Are we going to have like my company has a help desk. I don't want to use that term, but it's you can call 24/7. Are we going to provide something that they could reach out to, even if it's like till 11 o'clock at night?
We don't have staff members that are actually working in that hours. We did speak with Dr. Pelletieri, and there have been some ideas that we've been thinking about on how we could do something like that. Again, we do have some remote support websites where people can, email addresses where people can send stuff in, and then we usually do address those at those different times of the day. But for things that are after hours right now, we don't have a 24-hour support line. But we have talked about things like that, and that may be something we can consider in the future.
There are those that Otis for Education, for example, might help me with a step or a process that I'm struggling with, which would be a resource for me outside of the regular school day or hours.
Well, as we roll these out and they start to use them, and we start to see the community coming back with those kind of questions at those times, I just want to see if that's something we consider at the time, right?
Anyone else? Ms. Pickwick?
Just in terms of maybe that support, utilizing students. I mean, I know some of my students, I have a Google certification, all that. Some of them are still more tech savvy than I am, looking at a peer system that maybe gaining community service hours, et cetera, that they could be there for the support for the students or staff that are less tech savvy.
Sure. I know some school districts have implemented their Chrome Depot and a couple things like that, or their Genius bars and things like that to help other students as well.
I like that one, Chrome Depot. Someone has that already?
I believe so.
I may patent that one. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Renda.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, I want to thank you for your hard work this summer and your staff as well. 7,500 Chromebooks in and out of this district. Pretty amazing into the hands of our students and staff. And you have some very talented people. Our music teacher who sang this song, a person that wrote it. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I think we're up to the plan.
Yeah, so we're going to go through the business.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Business, please.
Yeah. So we're going to jump around a little bit, if that's okay with everybody. We're going to just go through the business, then we're going to allow for public comment, and then we're going to talk about the plan, if that's okay. Yes? Letter F on page 2 is the approval of minutes for the August 18th, 2021 meeting. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Isernia, seconded by Mr. Reynolds. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 3 is business items, approval of district-wide school safety plan. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Kiernan, seconded by Mrs. Slattery. Any questions? I have a question for John. I don't know if he has a microphone down there, or even Chris, but I know that we put it on the website. Do we get a lot of feedback when we put that up on the website, or no?
No, can you guys hear me up there?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no feedback specific to the plan itself. I did receive some comments that I did share with the board related to masks and things of that nature, but not specific to the plan. So the plan you're adopting right now is not changed from the draft form I submitted to you 30 days ago.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. On the bottom of page 2, we are at personnel teachers, consent agenda A through P. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Scavo, seconded by Mr. Baumann. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Mrs. Capeland, did you need to go at all tonight or no? Okay. We're sitting in all different areas tonight, so I didn't know. We are on page 15 in the middle towards the bottom, personnel support staff, consent agenda A through I. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Mrs. Slattery. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. We're going to flip over to page 19 on the top. We are on contracts, consent agenda A through F. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Pickowitz, seconded by Mrs. Slattery. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 7 is a NISBA conference. Can I please have a motion? It's letter A. Motion by Mr. Isernia, seconded by Mrs. Scavo. I just have a question, and maybe John is the best, or Chris is. It says how much the conference itself is, but then it says there's reimbursements. How much is the total cost, and is there an estimate of the total cost?
I personally haven't looked at what the hotel costs are or how many nights each of the two members would be staying. So it'll be a per person charge at the New York Hilton, plus meal reimbursements, travel, train, however they get to the city, things of that nature. So it will be several $100s per person.
Okay. All in favor? Please, I'm sorry, question by Mr. Isernia.
Just Chris, when you, after you go, you and Laura, I mean, will you provide us some feedback on what?
Of course.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were all in favor or a question. I apologize. Anyone else? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. On the bottom of page 20, Committee on Special Education, consent agenda A through B. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Mrs. Pickowitz. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 9 is monthly reports. Please.
Okay, the audit committee needs to meet because we have to adopt by law. John, what is the date that we have scheduled to meet?
The audit committee will meet on the 29th of September to receive the draft reports of the external and internal audit reports from both auditing firms. The following Wednesday, the external firm, I think that's the 6th of October, will be here at the board meeting to present the results of the financials to the entire board for you to adopt them. October 15th, the documents all must be filed with the state.
Right, so we're on a time deadline, so John had sent down an email to confirm the date that we can meet to accept the audit reports and go through them. So just as far as committees, I know we're held up on that. I looked at the resumes, and it's basically the same people who have been on it, even some probably since you've been here, Rob. And so I'm just looking to get those committee members for the audit committee approved as soon as we can, so we can have the meeting to file the report for the state, which is required.
Any questions? I'm not really sure how we want to handle that.
I can read the names of the committee members, or
I don't know. I'm asking. I don't, what would be
asking.
best for us to continue to move business forward? That's my question.
right, so we need to move that business forward.
Rob, Jim, either one. What, you're both looking to pitch it.
I would just assume that the existing audit committee that's in place just get together and you know.
Right, but they need to be board approved, so that's why there's the holdup.
Wasn't there some that are board approved already or no?
No, because it
A one-year
ended,
term?
and so now they need to be board approved. So again, they're the same.
How many names do you have? Laura?
Yeah, what I did is I took the liberty of taking everyone who expressed written interest on the committee, as well as the board members who've expressed interest, and I've sent all the emails to them thus far. That's where we arrived at the date, just assuming at some future point, we're going to convene and approve all those members.
Right, so the Board of Ed trustees are Jim Kiernan, Mike Isernia, and I. And the board audit committee is Bob Christie, Jeff Keegan, Dorothy Roberts, Barbara Roden, Jeffrey Sirico, Meredith Volpe, and I think Deborah
Perillo?
Perilla. I'm not sure if she sent in yet,
I
but,
don't believe so. I have not included her on the emails.
okay, but she's been on for a few years, so,
So they seem like a lot of the same members, and it's not
Yeah.
an oversized group that's experienced. So I have no problem proving that tonight, so they can get working on
Okay.
it at the time of essence. So
All right,
if nobody has
so-
objections, I'll make a motion to approve that.
Yeah.
I'll second the motion. All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Good.
Thank
Move
you.
forward. Laura, can you just bring back, when I talk to the auditor, I guess I take a phone call with him once a year.
Yes.
One of his main things that he said to me was that every committee should have a charter should have a list of whether it be, president or whatever the titles are that we want to make them. And then there should be a number of people on each of them. That was directly from the auditor. If you want to just confirm that, and maybe you can bring that back, and that would help our conversation move forward.
Okay,
I think Mike brought that up, and I thought it was a great idea at the time.
right. Yeah, and John, I know the audit committee is
The
set
audit
by the
committee by
state.
policy is the most defined group.
Yeah.
Right.
It clearly states that there must be a minimum of 3 community members, and then any member of the board can be a member of it.
Yeah, and I'm just
Obviously,
saying that for all the rest of the committees, because I know that we're still in discussion about certain things on
Yeah, that
committees moving
particular
forward.
committee is well written into policy.
Thank
Okay,
you.
but I'll make sure I know Jeff Sirico has been our chairperson
Yes,
on
Sirusco.
audit
Perfect.
for a while.
Thank you,
All
Laura.
right, thank you very much.
Anyone else have an update? Okay. So before we talk about the plan, I'd like to do public comment. And then, okay, fine. So what we'll do is we'll do the plan, but before we take any action, we'll just show the plan and then we'll go from there.
Then comment and then action.
I just can't hear you, but please.
I just want to rewind, when are we going to actually choose, I'm new to the choosing of the board, the community members on those groups, when are we going to do that?
Yeah,
I know
so-
a lot of people,
So I had that on the agenda tonight, but there was a recommendation that I kind of went with that said that we should just keep the business mostly to what was on the agenda, plus just the reopening plan, because I had the committee conversation, I had renaming a field conversation, we had multiple conversations, said, let's scrap it all, let's make sure we do this tonight. So I would assume, and I hope that everyone's okay with it, to do everything next meeting. And we can kind of go from there.
I just want the people who put their applications
Yeah,
in,
and
so
it was
that
on, and
they're
I
aware.
took it off.
Okay.
Yep. So we're gonna go back down?
Yep.
Sorry, Laura. We're going back down.
We're all going to go back down in front, and I'm going to do the plan from the front there. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out tonight. We're going to go through our plan, then we're going to have a opportunity for public comment, and then the board is going to act on the recommendations in that plan. This will work. Probably not turned on. Nope. If you turn on the button, right, Mr. Scavo, it'll work. Thank you. We spoke about last month or earlier this summer around our priorities for back to school. Our priorities are always health and safety of students and staff. We wanted to prioritize in-person instruction for all of our students. I sent an email letter last week that caused some consternation, some confusion. I apologize that I sent a follow-up. We will have students in every day. There are no cohort or hybrid days. We want to minimize the need for quarantines. We need our kids and our staff, our students in the buildings, not out of the buildings. We had horror stories last year. Kids quarantined 3 and 4 times, out 10 days each time they were quarantined. I really want to focus on a return to normalcy. All those things that we have in our schools, our clubs, our sports, our events, our shows, our theatrical performances, our classes, everything that we have. I want to have as much of that as possible, having visitors back in our buildings, our PTA and the like. And we want to focus on social, emotional, and mental health needs of students and staff. Our kids have been through a lot. Our staff has been through a lot the last year. I met with our staff today. Many people who came back today, was our first day back. It was interesting to speak to them. They were very excited about being back and such a different mindset from last year. Literally, we started last year not knowing what was going to happen, what we were facing. Yet we got through that year together as a Sachem family and the Sachem community as one community. And we know that we're facing a better year this year. And so we were happy to be back and in a better mindset. In terms of health and safety, these are the protocols that we will have. As you know, the governor did announce last week that masks will be required for students and staff in school and on buses. Mask space will be provided often and upon request. That's very important. At any time that student feels they need one, they should ask for one. They will not be required outdoors in any outdoor spaces such as recess, phys ed. We're going to encourage folks get outside, get out into the fields, get out in the sun, get outside and do some teaching and learning. There will be no dreaded online health screening every day. That came out of Ms. Hines' office every day, 4:30 in the morning. She'd get up and send that email. Thank you, Ms. Hines. We do not need to do that anymore. Thank goodness. We will not be having that health screening. We do ask, obviously, that people stay home when they are ill or if they are awaiting a PCR test. We will have a regular arrival and dismissal, no shortened days, no shortened bell schedules or anything such as that. We will have a regular classroom setup. Essentially, we're about 3 feet of social distancing as practicable. And the guidance does allow this. If there are times when you cannot be at 3 feet or cannot be at 6 feet, if your goal is to get all your kids back in the building, then you need to do that. And so that's what we're doing. So our classroom spaces will be at 3 feet. There are times when our cafeteria or other areas might not be for short periods of time. Again, the goal was get everybody in every day. And so that's what we were doing. We're going to have lunch in our cafeterias as well as practicable. We may have too many students in a particular place, in a particular space, but we are trying to be as normal as possible, as we stated. So we're going to have lunch back in our cafeterias. Hand sanitizer stations are located throughout each building. We'll have PPP in the buildings and classrooms as necessary. We do have MERV 13 filtration filters in our HVACs, and a lot of people have asked about that. And we will have the same cleaning protocols in last year that kept us safe. There will still be contact tracing and quarantining. Mrs. Kristen Capeliden, I'm sorry about that. I know you ran a lot of that last year. I did not laugh just then. I know you ran a lot of that last year, and Stacy, and I appreciate all your work, and Gary and Shannon and all the good folks in the offices there. Students will not, there are some new quarantine rules, though, that will help us cut down on quarantine. Students do not need to quarantine with spacing of 3 feet or more. So that's why we're going to try to keep all our students at 3 feet or more while masked. And since the governor has said that we will be wearing masks, we do not have to have as many quarantines as we might. This doesn't apply to adults. However, they have to be at 6 feet at different times. That's a specific measure, and we'll get all this information up on the website. Fully vaccinated and asymptomatic students who are previously diagnosed with COVID-19 in the last 3 months will also not need the quarantine. Our reappropriated spaces have returned to their original use, the art rooms, the music rooms, the phys ed rooms. I'm sorry I'm standing here, like blocking you guys. Let me try to get out of the way. I'll just block Mr. Scavo here. Visitors will be, isolation areas have been identified. If someone takes ill during the day, they will go back to that isolation area, as we had last year. Visitors will be permitted in our buildings. They must adhere to district health and safety protocols, including wearing masks. Elementary lunch, again, back in cafeteria with spacing as available. Secondary lunch, some of the secondary buildings are lucky enough. I know North, I think Sagamore have some outdoor areas. We're going to look to expand those outdoor areas for our kids. And in some instances, we may have to rotate lunch in the cafeteria or outside to make sure that we're being equitable in those practices. And of course, we'll have hand washing, sanitizing. We're going to encourage kids and show kids and lead them there, but some kids are not as good at washing their hands or care as much about it as others. But obviously, we will stay on them. Regular elementary recess will return. Kids can play with each other. I mean, last year, I remember the stories and the calls and the concern. My son sees his friend playing over on the playground, but he can't go over there because he's with his cohort and things like that. Those things have gone away. So they will be able to play again with classmates and across their classes and kick a soccer ball and throw a baseball and things like that. We are, of course, encouraging them to bring their own water bottles, and we have bottle filling stations in each building. In terms of teaching and learning, I hope I just didn't knock the whole thing out again. I must stay over here. Full return K to 12 for our students. Actually, pre-K. We have pre-K now through 12. We had pre-K in the past, but now we have universal full day pre-K, which is fantastic for our community. We will have a traditional bell schedule. There is no remote option at this time. We have home teaching for medically fragile students. And what that means, if you have a medically fragile student in your home or a parent that lives with a medically fragile student, a grandparent, someone that lives in that home, they can apply for home teaching. That process is the same as it's always been. The letter goes from the doctor, or the parent has a doctor's letter. She sends it to the school principal. That is shared with the nurse. That goes to our lead nurse, Mrs. McCabe, and to our chief medical officer, Dr. Jack Nussbaum, and he will approve the home teaching. You'll be contacted by our office. The curriculum office does that, and they'll be contacting families around home teaching. We're setting this process up now. This process should be starting by the 13th, which is that first Monday when we begin school. So again, for medically fragile students, we do have a home teaching option. That teaching would be in the home, but during this time period, it's going to be done virtually. This information and a lot of other information, including an FAQ that we created, will be on our webpage tomorrow. We're going to create a back-to-school page. When you open the website, it'll pop up. You can click on it. You'll find this PowerPoint. You'll find our new FAQ that will be there. You'll find the information around homeschooling for home instruction or home teaching for medically fragile students. And there'll also be information around homeschooling for folks who feel that they want to homeschool their child. There will be distance learning only if the state or district closes schools. Unfortunately, we did have incidents last year where we had to close school a couple times. North had to do that. Linwood had to do that. And we will have our information on the website as well in terms of distance learning for that. We will have field trips, concerts, sports clubs. Those will all return. We will be using our lockers. We'll be changing for phys ed. Visitors, PTA will return to the building, and teachers will be maintaining their Google Classroom daily. Last year, we showed you pictures of really spaced out classrooms, 6 feet apart. Our kids are back in their typical areas, and you'll see there's a kidney-shaped table back in that classroom. We're anxious to have the kids working together again where we can, where practicable, and being smart about it. Childcare, UPK, and BOCES, before and after care services provided by Scope. That's an educational service. They're up and running. They will be up and running. Again, full day for the first time, and then half day UPK begins. They must follow the district health and safety protocols as well. And we will have busing for our students at our high schools for our BOCES programs. They're up and running. We have a great many resources. I could click on these again tomorrow. When you go into the page, you'll be able to click on these. If we ask you to report a vaccination, you can do that. If we ask you to report, obviously, a positive COVID case, we would use that form there. Any guidance from the Department of Health around terms of masking or health and safety or CDC, guidance specific to Suffolk County, any travel advisory. So last year, we had a COVID-19 info page. This back to school page, at least to start, will have a lot of our information and resources for our folks in our school community. I want to thank everyone that helped us create this plan. Again, really in a partnership. Facilities folks, clerical folks, nurses, food service, security, administrators, teachers, supervisors, parents, school community, including our Board of Education, all were part of putting this plan together. I want to thank everyone publicly for their hard work around that. I believe that's the end of it, right? That is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much. We'll go up and then have questions. Gabriella, you can clap, sorry. You can clap if you like.
Dr. Pelletier, just a quick question. I think one of the big issues right now is going to be around mask breaks. I think last year, the teachers had unclear guidance like we did at times. And I think that what's going to happen is that some people will do it, let's just say, more liberally than others. Can we support the teachers by having a practice where, whether it be every other row, whether we put times up on the board so that they don't have to interrupt their classes, but there's a universal way of giving appropriate mask breaks, and then if kids need on top of that, they can always take them if necessary.
So you saw in the guidance tonight, and this is something that'll be available to everyone, and reinforce that mask breaks are to be each period, they ought to be often, and they ought to be offered when a child asks for one, without a doubt. So we can work, I observed classes last year in physical education, for example. This row had their mask down, they took a break while another row kept theirs up. I mean, it can be done, it should be done as a practice that we should have become accustomed to, quite frankly. And I thought did a pretty good job towards the end of the year last year when we did give people some better guidance. So I know that we can do that.
Okay. Anyone else? Please, Ms. Pickowitz.
The terminology that was used in the presentation.
Sabrina,
was-
you're going to just have to get closer to the microphone. Yeah.
Can you hear me now? The terminology that was used in that presentation was upon request. So does that mean if a child needs a mask break that they could be denied a mask break?
So the idea was that we would have mask breaks every period, and in elementary, they don't have periods, but essentially each session, if I'm teaching ELA or social studies or science. And then if during that time, between breaks, I decided I wanted a mask break, I would just let my teacher know that I'd like to take a mask break. We just want to be conscious of the other people around those students. We're all going to be closer this year. So that's just like, I'm going to, can I take a mask break? I'm going to take a mask break. I don't know that we would deny mask break. There might be an opportunity again as a teacher that says, oh, at this moment, I have everyone up and around the room. Let's hold on to that, but we'll still do that going forward. I want to encourage it as much as possible.
Chris, let me just ask a question, and I'm not trying to break chops, but I think that at the older schools, the older kids, they're much more apt to ask. And the elementary kids might not feel that way. And I just want to give the support to the teachers to know, like, hey, you know what? Right on the boards, rows 1, 3, and 5, you'll have, whatever it is, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, whatever the time is that we're allowed from this time to this time every day.
Yeah.
And then the next rows, only because, like, what if, I just don't want them going home and saying, I was scared to raise my, and then they tell the parents tell us, and then the teachers put in a spot where, well, the district told us that all the kids had to do was ask, but the kids are scared to ask.
Yeah,
And that's a lot what we're hearing from the community.
Okay. I don't want kids to be scared to ask. I don't want them going home saying I couldn't ask. I was embarrassed to ask. I didn't want to ask. I didn't know how to ask. I want us to encourage the mask breaks as much as possible. We can come up with systems in schools, and I'll talk with principals and staff around making sure that time is allocated for each and every student. And when they need something additional, that there's a process for it. A lot of, hey, you could be sitting here, take down a mask, have a sip of water, something like that, take that momentary break. And I don't have an issue with that. I just want to make sure teachers are conscious of that, of what's going on in their
Yeah,
classroom.
I just think one of our biggest issues, right, as a board is when the state releases something to us, we don't know what the heck it says, right? And now the teachers are going to say, well, Dr. Pelletier said just all you got to do is ask. And then
Yeah,
I just don't want it to get lost in
That's
translation.
why we have that gentleman right down on the end.
Yeah, he doesn't follow
I
the
don't
kids
mean to
around. No, I
make
love that
light
he's
of
with
it,
us, but he
every
doesn't.
time we get guidance, that's
Yeah.
the first call and email.
I want to be supportive of the teachers. I want the kids to know that this is definitely going to be happening. I don't want to have the parents call and say, so-and-so is doing it, but so-and-so is not doing it. If we can just give clear directive to everybody, I think that would be in a time where this is a very hot topic, where it could just be clear to everybody that this is definitely what we're
Yeah,
doing. But
I'm gonna-
whether my system works, I'm not saying it's the best way. I'm
Mhm.
just giving an option.
No,
Mr.
but-
Sonia.
Certainly to find, I'm looking in the camera now, I think I am, to say to our community and to our staff that we are going to have mask breaks often and each period, and that there should be clear guidance as to students in the class, the process around which to have a mask break.
Mr. Sonia.
Chris, just at the elementary level, I guess, we're going to have recess, and so long as the weather's good, we're going to encourage them to go outside. Do they just have one recess a day? Do they have 2 recesses a day? Because that's an opportunity.
That sounds like a fun school. How many recesses do you want, Mr.
Well, take 3.
But 3 a day?
Well, I guess the point is, if they're outside, they can take their masks off. They can, they get a 20-minute time, free without a mask.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
While
so-
they're eating, they'd have their mask down. While they're outside, they'd have their mask down. Anytime phys ed, for example, we're going to encourage them to be outside, have their mask down. There may be other opportunities. I visited, oh my gosh, I got tomatoes. I bought some tomatoes from the staff there through a fundraiser, and some beautiful heirloom tomatoes from Winona. And the kids were outside a lot of the time, that class, working with
But I was going
with
to
those-
suggest, especially while the weather's good, at the elementary level, and let the building level figure it out, but encourage the teachers, as they have an outside door, right? They all have an outside door.
Yes.
They want to take the kids out, bring the chairs out, sit outside without their masks and teach a lesson in the good weather. I mean, I think those are the kind of things that we can be creative with and not be violating anything because they're outside and they don't,
100%. I
So
know
I-
we encouraged that last year. I know we started to do that last year. We had some great summer programs that took place, a lot of it outdoors, very successful this past summer, and we'll continue to look to do that.
Yeah, just until the weather closes in anyway.
Without
It's
any,
tolerable.
even, a little cold never hurt anybody,
That's
right,
true.
Mr. Isonia?
Anyone else? All right, before we have public comment, I just want to talk about the two things quick that the board, I have on the discussion items. One is a potential joint legal action. I'd like to see Massapequa reach out to me, Locust Valley, their vice president reached out to me. I've been talking to 3 of the Smithtown School Board members. There is a possible lawsuit or whatever we want to call it. Chris is better. I didn't go to law school, so I'm not saying we're joining it tonight. I'm not saying that we're voting on it. I just would like to charge Chris with, you call the law firm, you give us the layman's terms back, and then we can take action so that we're as appropriately informed as everybody else.
Yeah, I'd be happy to gather information for you. That's fine. They'll
Chris,
give
I
you
have
the-
no idea what you just said. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I said I'd be happy to gather that information for you at your direction, and to the extent that in consultation with the lawyers who are pursuing that action, they wanted to set up some kind of communication with the board to give them information directly. I could probably arrange that for you as well. So I've been asked to do that by other districts, and as a part of that effort, I could do it on your behalf and report back to the board what I find. And obviously, to the extent that anything that I have entails giving you some legal advice, I would do that in executive session.
Does anyone have any objections to just charging Chris with kind of like a fact-finding mission? But what I'd like to do is, and if it's okay with everybody, if he does this Friday or Monday, and we can't wait until like the 22nd or 28th, this is going to start with or without us. And I'd rather, if it's something that we want to do after we get the information, I'd rather be on the train than trying to run after it. That's my only issue.
As long, Chris, you will give your legal opinion on the information that you gain, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that would happen in executive session because
Yeah.
obviously we have that privilege, but I'd be happy to share with you all the information that I gather. I don't have enough information on it to opine intelligently, so I would gather that information, give you my opinion. I know that the firm that is doing that is a reputable law firm, competent people, so we would have a conversation with them, learn a little bit about their investigation. As I understand it, there is no suit that has been filed. Rather, they've been charged with investigating the potential legal mechanisms to institute a challenge to the authority of state health officials to make the mandates that they've made, to potentially challenge that, the legal grounds to do it, and provide some analysis to another district. And to the extent that you want to gather that information from them or potentially become a part of litigation on a going forward basis, I'd be happy to gather that information, discuss it with you, obviously, in the context of our attorney-client relationship, and you can make a decision based on the receipt of that information.
Please.
Chris, the information that you're gathering, other than your legal opinion, is the information that you're gathering going to be in public session?
Right, of course. I mean, my legal advice to you about pending or potential litigation is something that's appropriate for exec session, but something like, what would be the hourly retainer, or what are the, things like that obviously would be, public discussion.
Mr. Isonia?
Chris, just so everybody's clear, they're talking about a potential Article 78 proceeding to have it turned aside or enjoined. But regardless of whether we joined or not, if they were successful, it would apply across the state.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, certainly, and Mike, I'd be speculating, but I think it's fair, excuse me, it's fair speculation that Article 78 would be the mechanism by which a governmental determination would be challenged, right? But I don't know that for sure. I don't know that it's even matured to that point yet in terms of their analysis. But yeah, like by way of example, if another school district bought a suit and it caused a regulation, law, or determination or action of a public entity to be overturned, that wouldn't just apply to the plaintiff in that case. If a law is declared unconstitutional, by way of example, that law is declared unconstitutional for everybody, not just for the individuals who bought the suit.
Anyone else? So everyone is okay with charging Chris with, Rob, please, I'm sorry.
Okay, Chris, just as a follow-up, when you reach out to the law firm regarding this potential lawsuit, could you try and ascertain information on the number of districts that are participating in that? So we have a
Yeah,
better
sure, that would
idea.
be my intention on your behalf, to get as much information as possible about that, because typically when you talk about economies of scale, there are times, in class action lawsuits or other circumstances where, there's shared costs associated with it and so forth. And obviously, if there are more involved, the cost per, I would presume, I'm making presumptions here because I haven't had the conversation and I don't know for sure. That would be part of my fact finding, but absolutely to talk about, how those costs would be shared amongst, and among how many, and what that would mean for you guys budget-wise if you made the decision to pursue something like that.
Please, Mr. Reynolds.
So Chris, to that point, whether we join or not, we'll get the benefit of whatever the outcome could be, if it's a positive outcome or, right?
Right, so,
Without incurring the
unless there
cost
was
of
some
joining.
individual right of action that was bought.
Right.
And again, Benny, I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds. I'm not, I'm speculating that yes, that the challenge would be one that's saying, to Michael's point, an Article 78 saying that the governmental action, they've exceeded their authority, they've acted arbitrarily and capriciously. Those are the kind of standards that those actions are typically, governed by. And if such a ruling was made under that legal theory, it would be one that would be applicable to everybody, correct?
All right, okay, thank you.
So we can get some information and have the conversation and then figure out yes or no. Everyone is okay with that? Good.
Absolutely.
The second one I put on the board discussion item just quickly is, I'd like to, if the board is okay, and we could talk about details of what it is to write a letter to the state. And I'd like to CC Dr. Zucker from the DOH. I'd like to CC Commissioner Rosa. I'd like to send it to all of our assemblymen and all of our senators, which I printed out on this paper, and I'd like to send it to Kathy Hochul. My hope is that the letter talks about, this is a 90-day emergency regulation. Yes, Chris?
As it stands presently, yes.
Yeah.
You don't know what the legislature might do. when
And
it-
I don't know how long the lawsuit's going to last. So
Right.
what my question to the state is, what's the metric that they're using to determine whether or not it's going to be renewed in 90 days? I'd like to know what they're using. Is it local positivity rate? Is it a statewide broad brush? Is it, what exactly is it that where is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow at some point?
Yeah, and again, I know you're not asking that
No,
question.
I know. That's what I'd like the letter.
None of us has that answer right
Yeah.
now, right?
So,
But that
Alex,
certainly is something that's a question.
Alex, if we're going to write a letter, I think it's going to be very similar to the July 15th letter. Because in that letter, we were asking for certain things. If we need to tweak it and add what's the metric being used, I have no issue with that.
Yeah.
But I think it's a very similar letter, right? Asking for local control.
I don't have that letter in front of me, so I apologize. It was a while ago, but I definitely want local control back. That's definitely one of my bullets. And I definitely want, and again, this is my personal opinion, and please feel free to, if you disagree. But I would like to write in there that we're just not supporting a mandate of vaccination for either staff
So
or
that's
students.
that's in there. That's in. That's in.
We can do it again, because
So just so
obviously,
everybody's clear, that's in the July 15th letter that we already
Yeah,
approved and agreed to.
and my
So
only.
it's a very
and the-
similar letter that's already gone out. Let's
My-
just send
yeah,
that, right?
My only issue for asking for it again, other than
Yeah.
adding the metric, is that when we see Assemblyman Dinowitz in the Bronx, and we see Senator Hoylman bringing to the floor for debate mandatory vaccinations for students, I don't think they're hearing us. So I think.
So one of the other things
as
that
the
I'd like.
second largest in the state, I think we should.
Yeah, that's one
Send another
avenue.
one.
The other avenue is for us, as well as everybody in the community, to really start driving this conversation with your elected officials in Albany, the people that actually get paid by you, the taxpayers. So it's Doug Smith.
Let him talk.
It's
let him
Alexis
talk.
Week. It's Phil Boyle. On a Suffolk County level, it's Anthony Piccirillo, right? Those are the folks that you need to continue to advocate to as well. Them, along with us, can help drive this conversation. Because
Just so
they're the
everybody
ones that
knows.
can make the laws in Albany to get the change that everybody's looking for.
I asked Allison to print this up, so if anybody wants it in the
Here's
in
all
the
the numbers and
audience,
here's the districts.
then if anybody wants this in the audience, this is every single one of our local officials
So we've
and their
got
phone
that here
numbers.
to give to everybody, okay? We'll hand it out.
So, Jim?
Yeah, a letter has never gotten us anywhere. You know that, right? It's never gotten us anywhere.
We did get local control for a few
And
months.
that's not from the letter, that was from the expiration of the Emergency Act. And that's another thing, too. As far as local control, what does local control mean?
I think
The
you and I.
people out here have a totally different definition of local control, no?
Oh, I think that there's people up here that have a different definition of
Okay, well,
local
let's
control.
do that. Before we agree to write a letter, let's find out what we mean by local control.
Well, I think that when we started talking about what we were comfortable with the reopening plan, right? We were talking about a green, a yellow, a red zone. We were talking about monitoring our own buildings. We were talking about, we understand what we went through, with the shutdown and then the reopening of last year. We have the information to make an educated decision on our own. So local control is our district making a local decision. Because
Right.
how do you compare, right, a school in upstate New York to us in Suffolk County? Or how do you compare us to Central Islip or Brentwood? Maybe there's a higher rate of positivity there, so I wouldn't want the DOH saying, oh, Suffolk County has to wear masks now because it's hot in one area, but we don't know.
So Alex, let me just interrupt, right?
Yeah.
So let's get to the issue of local control. Let's rip this Band-Aid off, right? Because again, I'm a straight talker, right? Local control from Jim's perspective doesn't mean parental choice. It means local control, meaning this board makes that decision, right?
Yeah,
That's what we're
with
talking
input
about.
from all our
With
stakeholders, is which we did.
With
for the
input
renewal
from the
plan.
community,
Yeah.
right? And we all know we have a split community,
Yeah.
so just beware what we're asking for, because that's what we may get.
Yep. Mr. Isonia?
Yeah, Alex, I do support the idea of a letter, but I am curious myself at what metric they're using. First of all, at what metric would they decide to lift this mandate completely, right? So, I mean, I think those are legitimate questions to say, what are you as the state using to make that judgment? Is it a statewide broad brush measurement? Because I know from the research, they weren't even contemplating the rural areas, right? Depending on the density. So they're only looking at down here, really.
Yeah.
So, in the letter, we should be very, very specific and just request, what are you using and what can we use? And at some point, what metric can we use to judge that we can make changes? Or if you're going to allow us.
Yeah.
So I am on board with that. We do need to know that.
Ms. Pickowitz?
So just my personal opinion in terms of local control, I think Sachem did a really good job. Dr. Pelletieri started off with the process of meeting with all the units within the Sachem School District. So teachers, administrators, secretary came up with the original plan. We then had our August 18th meeting. We heard from our community. We got tons of emails. We had the Zoom conference. We didn't just knee-jerk reaction a plan. We had a contingency plan that if our numbers get out of control, I know not everybody's in support of that, but if our numbers got out of control, we were going to take charge of that. We were going to look at our district. We were going to look at our hamlets, our surrounding hamlets, and make decisions about that. I don't want to be held to what's going on in Buffalo, Brooklyn, or Montauk. I want to see what's going on in our district. We did read all the guidance that we got from the Suffolk Department. Dr. Pelletieri was sending that to us. We read it. We saw their suggestions. We saw what Betty Rosa put out to us. And I think we did a really good job of local control. I mean, I'm in education for 19 years. Local control is a unicorn, right? We never get it. Here we want to get that local control back where we can make decisions of what's happening in our community. But it can't be just one unit gets to say what happens. It has to be a collaborative effort and take a look at what's happening in our community. And I don't want to get mandated with our backs against the wall because we know where this is going to head to. I mean, we were there 2 years ago with mandating and students having to leave this school district. I don't want to be there again.
Yep,
I don't want to be there again.
Mr. Isonia and then Mrs. Slattery, please.
Vinny, you brought up the Suffolk County Legislature, and I think there is a piece of this that we need to address with them, and that is the quarantining rules that Suffolk County Department of Health is placing on us. Because right now, even if we had this choice and we allowed parents to decide to send their kids in with a mask or without a mask, if a child came in without a mask and went home that night, didn't feel good, and got tested and was positive, because that child didn't have a mask on, those quarantining rules from Suffolk County would force us to wipe out everybody that was within 6 feet of them.
Yep.
So we got to get on Suffolk County if you're going to get any type of
Eliminate.
relief, because one child could wipe out a third of his elementary class in, what is it, 10 days, right? And then if you had a middle school or a high schooler, and regardless of whether everybody around them had a mask on, that high school is going to move classes, I guess, 7 or 8 times. He could wipe out 25% of his grade level.
Yeah.
Or she could wipe out 25% of a grade level. So there is a piece of this that Suffolk County's got to give relief on, right?
Yeah. And just so, because I talk to my brother every single day, it never went in front of the legislature for debate. This is something that Steve Ballone and Dr. Piggott did without any debate. This is whether it came down from the state and they just listened or not, but there's no debate in anything. It's really it just follows itself down and trickles down and just eliminates control as it goes.
Yeah, but
along.
what did they base it on? I mean, I guess
Well,
in the
that's the question that I'm
early
asking.
stages, it must have been, this is the best we could do, but
Yeah.
there must be some more science to this now.
All the more why it's important to bring this out tonight, so the community can now start focusing the attention on those elected officials to do the things like the debates, to bring this up to the legislature, right?
So if it's okay, if we can add to the letter, and Laura, I know that you're next, and then Jim, please, that we can also write this, we can ask for a metric from the DOH to eliminate the quarantine, or give us more information on how that ends. Give us data that shows that we sent home 33 kids, and we have it because I asked, and the percentage of kids that tested positive while in quarantine is so minute, it's unbelievable. It doesn't make any sense. So that's got to be part of it. I want it to be clear where we stand. We want information. That's all it is. You want to hand us down a mandate? Hand it down with information that proves that what you're doing is right. And we haven't had that yet. So that's what I want the letter to be. Laura?
So the other day I had sent everybody on the board the letters that William Floyd had sent out. One was to Steve Ballone to please share with the districts the positivity rates per community. So again, we want local control. If Sachem is not affected, where we have large numbers, we should be making the decisions for our district. Again, I'm echoing what everybody says. What happens upstate may not happen here. So that's why I believe in local control for this issue. But what I ask everybody here is please be respectful of people that have different perceptions of this. There are Sachem families that have lost their moms, their dads, their brothers, and their sisters to COVID. There are Sachem community members in Stony Brook right now being put on a vent. There are Sachem long haulers like myself, 10 months after COVID, still needing oxygen and seeing doctors from Columbia University to Stony Brook. So when you speak, I get what you're saying. I am just asking. We all have different perspectives on this. I have done my research because, again, I am seeing doctors. So you may have your research, and that's great. I may have different. I'm just asking that when we speak, this is our community members. We are our community. Our kids are going to be going to school. Some are going to wear a mask, some are not. They are going to follow your lead. If you can't be respectful to other adults that have a different opinion, I don't know what else to say. On this board, we have had different opinions. Meredith is one of my good friends. We have had different opinions. We have always respected each other, and that's what I'm asking from our community. I don't think that's a lot.
Mr. Kiernan?
Yeah, I don't want to just get hung up on this, but it's, to me, a big issue, and that's the definition of local control. At the last meeting, we heard dozens and dozens and dozens of people coming, and their impression was that there was going to be parent choice. When Dr. Pelletieri put out our opening plan prior to the mandates, we all approved a hybrid plan, right? We all approved the hybrid plan, which would be mandatory mask for everybody. So I just want to make sure that they understand that if we ask for local control, and we get local control, that's not saying that it's going to all of a sudden be no masks. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
Is that we have to be careful of, we don't want to be disingenuous to these people.
No, but I think when they talk about parent choice, and I could be wrong because I'm not a parent, so I have no idea, but when they talk about parent choice, it's in consultation with their child. They're going to make a decision when they're allowed to take it off, whether it's outside for now, or whether it's at their desk if we ever get back local control. They're going to make a decision, a parent and family decision, whether or not to take the mask off when they're allowed.
Wait, are you saying now that parent control, as of right now, means that if a parent doesn't want their child to wear a mask, they don't have to?
No, I'm saying that, like, let's say right now they go outside, right? I think there will be some families that decide not to take their mask off outside. I think that's
Okay.
that's a family
Right.
parent choice.
What about when they're
No,
sitting at their seat?
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
What about when they're sitting at their seat?
No, right now, we're stuck.
Okay,
Guys,
there is no parent choice.
No, right now, we're stuck.
All right, then
Yeah.
we're on the
Oh,
same.
yeah. We're talking about in the letter, if we ever get it back, to get back to our plan, which was that hybrid model when they were sitting.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else? Mr. Pikowitz and Mr. Isonia.
This is a question to you. You just said that it's a 90-day,
Get closer.
sorry, it's a 90-day, thank you.
Regulate it.
But you said that when the legislature, can you speak to that, please?
So, the way this sort of obligation came to be is that under the public health law and certain provisions of the sanitation law, the Commissioner of Health is empowered to give certain edicts, and he did so on August 27th. And that took the form of a 90-day order. What I just wanted to caution is, what we haven't seen is the legislature in session, and certainly the legislature has the capacity to pass a law that could supersede the authority that has been exercised by the Commissioner of Health. So I just wanted to make sure, whenever we talk about this, right, we're kind of addressing the known facts at the time we're dealing with it, but throughout this last 18 months, we start planning based on a directive we're given on Monday, and we have the rug pulled out from under us on Friday, and it's been a very frustrating process. And I'm not just talking about in the context of masks, right, but other obligations that the district's had in terms of health, safety, cleaning, all the sort of things that we need to do. And we would find that, kind of to Alex's point, the information that we would get from the state would be lacking the necessary specificity, probably written by people who weren't educators without a clear understanding of what that really meant to implement in schools. So, one of the cautions we always have to say is this has been like, we've been getting executive orders and mandates lobbed at us like mortars into our camp for 18 months, and we have to scramble and respond to the explosion, never knowing where it's going to land. And look, the legislature's coming back into session, so I can't predict that they are or are not going to do something when that happens. So right now we're wrestling, the bear in front of us, which is August 27th order of the Commissioner of Health. But again, we could be confronted with something else coming down the road, and we have to be, prepared to deal with that too.
Mr. Isonia, please.
Yeah, Chris, I don't want to put you on the spot, but some other districts have received some very nasty letters from the commissioner after they adopted plans. So just for the record, you've seen Dr. Pelletari's reentry planning based on the current state of what we know the regulations and mandates to be. Is there anything in that plan right now that you think violates anything that the commissioner could say we are not in compliance?
No, and again, the commissioner's direction incorporates by reference, CDC guidance and other things, right? He doesn't, the order that he gave pertaining to schools in his order was like a paragraph. So obviously we have to look back to some prior guidance about things like, mask breaks and things like that. And what we haven't gotten clearly is clarity on contact tracing and consequences. But I've seen nothing in Dr. Pelletari's plan as being considered by the board that is in any way violative of our obligations under the law. I mean, clearly we have to adhere to the mask mandate as a matter of law when it's imposed on us. But there have been built into the regulatory scheme, even when we had a mask mandate last year, that was pursuant to the executive orders, we always had mechanisms for mask breaks and things like that. What we always wrestled with when we provided those things was making sure we did it in a way that didn't, there was two things we had to worry about. One, complying with the law, which I'm confident that it is. And the second is understanding the clarity of under what circumstances we have to quarantine kids. Because I think anybody on any side of this discussion, anywhere, their primary motive is for kids to be able to get back to school and live a normal life in school. It's what everybody wants. And so, how do you avoid having to quarantine kids too is a critical concern of ours. And trying to get some clarity about, the effective decisions that we make on quarantining protocols is something we're always seeking. We're always worried about them changing the rules mid-game, all that kind of stuff. But no, to your point, Michael, I think that Dr. Pellettieri's plan as proposed to you is compliant with the law.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Please.
Dr. Pelletier, the one thing, what is quarantine going to look like in terms of a student that needs to be quarantined for the 10-day? I don't know. The rules change every day, so I don't even know what to speak to that. What is that going to look like? So a K-5 student gets quarantined. What is their schooling going to look like while they're at home for that 8 to 10 days? And then also, what is that going to look like for our secondary, our 6 to 12 students if they are quarantined?
So our students will still be in their Google Classroom with their peers and their teachers. So their work will still be provided. In K-5, obviously, they're going to need more support. We're working on a system now where students would get quarantine support. At the elementary level, it would be an hour a day with 2 teachers. And at the secondary level, it would be quarantine support. The most they'd have is 8 days because there'd be a weekend at some point in between there. So they could avail themselves of the quarantine support again at the secondary level. I don't know how many of our secondary students would necessarily do that, but they still have their teacher. They're not going anywhere. Their teacher's not going anywhere. They can still interact with their teacher. We would also set up a system where they're getting support from, if it's earth science class, an earth science teacher, from math class, a math teacher. And at the elementary level, we would make sure that we have K-2. We're actually looking at a plan where we have 2 teachers in that classroom. We're looking to have special educators as part of that program as well. So students would get support. It wouldn't be full day online, just learning, sitting at a computer. It would be more of a, it might be group. It might be depending on how many people are out at that time and how many resources and teachers are available. As you know, we are limited in what we can offer at any time, but we would have quarantine instruction and support K through 12.
So 6 to 12, you said 2 hours, so that would be 30 minutes per academic. Like, how would that be broken?
Yeah, we're ironing out that piece right now, working with our teachers around. We have to make sure that we have teachers to be able to do this, and they can't do it during their regular day. It has to be done outside their day. So I know that we're creating postings to have people available to do that. So that will have to be ironed out still. So we're looking at maybe it could be an hour of math on Monday, math and science outside the school day. Tuesday would be social studies ELA. Wednesday back to math science. I know they're working on a schedule. And again, that will all be posted in our back to school plan immediately.
Any questions? Is everyone in favor of, do you have a question, Rob? I'm sorry.
Just
I
a
apologize.
comment,
I see your hand.
and I'm not going to speak on behalf of the entire board, but I know that we do speak regularly, and I can honestly say that many of the board members up here, frustrated, just as the community is frustrated. The governor's office, last minute, as Mr. Clayton said, puts out a mandate after telling us that we're going to have that local control and make decisions that are best suited for our children in our district. And quite honestly, I thought we put out a good hybrid plan that was sort of the middle of the road, that we could have protected the health of children at the same time, giving the kids some normalcy. Last year, one of the most frustrating things for me as an educator was that, I started to see kids' educational trajectory go down, and I started to see kids say, I hate school. I don't want to go to school anymore. And it's probably one of the most frustrating things because these are kids that never felt that way before. And, the fact of the matter is that, when the governor comes out and says, well, I made my decision based on the fact that I've spoken to superintendents, I've spoken to school boards, I've spoken to, we had probably more than 4,000. John, how many quarantines did we have last year? 4,000 plus quarantines? 3,000? Well, we quarantined Sachem North for 3 days, so there's 2,000 students there. So, if you do the math, we had one recorded case where a student tested positive from COVID as direct contact. So all of those children lost days and days of face-to-face education, which has a tremendous impact on them. And we can't allow that to happen. In that letter, we have to stress that quarantines, if social distancing is 3 feet, then quarantines shouldn't be more than 3 feet. We shouldn't be taking out an entire middle section of a classroom and sending them home. You know, it's detrimental to the students' education. It's detrimental to their social and emotional being. So, look, I'm going to be honest. I'm in favor of a strong letter, as Mr. Reynolds had pointed out, and Ms. Picarillo. I would like to pursue possibly looking into the feasibility of that lawsuit to see if it's something that, you know, is going to make change, you know, in district and possibly return that local control so we could make decisions that are sound for our community, you know. But I think we need to move quick, and I think we need to, you know, to effectuate change. Look, I'm going to tell you, Mr. Reynolds brought up reaching out to the local officials, and I know there's folks out here that have done it. I know. I speak to Doug Smith. I know that he gets calls. A few years back, when we had 900 people in this room, and I'm sure many people were in this room at the time, when we were talking about losing kindergarten full time. The one thing that I did as the board president is I gave out the phone numbers, okay, and I asked them to, as a large group, just keep pounding their phones. And I got a call from one of the senators, and he said, "Rob, please make it stop." And I said, "Please make it stop. What are you talking about?" And, you know, I won't share who it was, but he said, "Please make it stop." And I said, "You know, you want it to stop." I said, "You need to provide us with additional funding so that we can continue to run full-day kindergarten." But if it wasn't the fact that the community came together and made all of those phone calls to all of those elected officials and created such a problem. I mean, they would say to me, "We can't get any work done in our office. Every time we hang up the phone, another situation parent calls us." You know, and that's what we have to do. We have to bury them on the phone calls so that they take their anger and frustration up to this governor, okay, to effectuate change and return local control back to school districts. That's what we need. If we're going to get this done, we have to get this done as a community. And that's the only way, you know, the nine of us can't do it by ourselves. We need the Sachem community to help us. So I would encourage everybody to continue to make those, you know, make those phone calls. We do need to gain local control back. We do need to be able to make decisions for our children based upon the needs of our children. You know, there's nothing like in-person learning, you know, face-to-face learning. There's no replacement for it. And what we need to do is change that culture and change that attitude that school is good, it's fun, it's great, and kids should be excited about going to school. So I'm on board with everything that was said here tonight.
Mr. Kiernan?
Yeah, so where we're at now is Chris is going to construct a letter, and then we will view that letter, and at that time, then we'll make a decision on whether we support it. Correct?
Well, I think that, I mean, we've talked, but we didn't do that for the last letter, I don't think. I think we approved it here and we got it out.
You mean we approved it before seeing it?
We approved, well, maybe he sent it in an email, but we approved it tonight.
It was shared with us.
And it was shared with us, and then he sent it. I went to Chris's office, I signed it, and it went out. We didn't have in a second board meeting. I thought we talked about changing.
Again, you know, refresh my memory. You mean to tell me I approved something I didn't read?
I don't know if you read your email, Jim.
So it came by email? It came by email?
It came by email. We approved it.
Is this going to come by email?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
saying we're not approving it until we read it, correct?
Right, we reserve the right to review it and approve it and make
That's all
sure
I'm
the
asking.
details of what we're agreeing
I
to.
just don't want anybody thinking that, okay, they approved the letter. There is no letter at the moment.
We
The other thing
approve
is-
the writing letter, but we need to view it before it goes out.
The other thing too
Alex-
is a point that we put on our website. For the
So I
families.
think what's being approved is the authorization
right.
for me to draft the letter on behalf
Hold on,
of,
let Chris talk.
draft the letter on behalf of the board containing the content that you've described. I mean, you've described pretty in-depth the nature of what you want to see in a letter, and everybody seemed to say that content was okay. Obviously, I would wordsmith it, to Vinnie's point, you know, harken back to prior correspondence that we've written and used, so it's not deviating from the positions that we've taken, but perhaps amplifying those with some of the comments that all of you have said that you wanted. And I'm sorry, Jim, I wasn't speaking directly into the thing there. So you'd be authorizing me to draft that letter and disseminate it to you for, you know, a look before it gets sent, but otherwise, you know, absent an objection from somebody saying, I don't want that sent with my name, then it would be okay for the president to sign it and send it.
Yep. All right, we have a little bit of a list. Sarah, Laura, then Mike, please.
See, I'm the opposite of all of you. I don't think that we should send a letter. I don't support the board making this medical decisions for my children. I think that should be left up to scientists and doctors to make those decisions.
Laura?
I also think, I like the other letter that William Floyd sent to Ballone's office about getting communities the data that they're all collecting. So we have what we have to report, we're not getting back.
We've just so you know, we've requested it. I've had my brother go to Dr. Piggott, and he has said that that data does not exist by Hamlet. He has flat out
Does that
told
make
him.
sense to anybody?
And I can confirm it because I was on the call too, and I didn't say anything, but I just listened. Just to say that he, not that I don't trust my brother, but I want to hear it. Because I know Bob at William Floyd, and I know he's been asking for months for that data,
Right.
and we can't get it.
Laura, I made note of your request too in my notes, so I'll include that.
Okay.
Mike and then Jim, please.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, the letter to the state is great, but you still need something to the county, because even if the state removed their mandate, the quarantine rules would still wipe out classes if we had a positive case.
Are the quarantine rules coming directly from the county, or is that from the
Suffolk
state
County-
DOH?
no,
to the
Suffolk-
DO Like, I don't know if it's the state DOH and then the local DOH does exactly what the state DOH does. I don't know what the.
I only saw them in the Suffolk County ones.
Yeah, the more specific quarantining descriptions were in the August 9th letter from Dr. Piggott. That was
From
where-
Piggott.
Yeah, and there
Okay.
were, I will say, there were some improvements in that letter from the past in terms of the social distancing and the protection that masks require. I mean, I think one of the,
Yeah.
one of the great frustrations that people have expressed is we're forced to wear masks, but then when it came to quarantining, masks weren't credited as having any value in the quarantine decision. So then what is the efficacy of them and so forth? In Dr. Piggott's letter from August 9th, at least there was, whether you want to call it a carrot and a stick, an incentive, whatever it is, that, that if everybody is masked, then only the positive quarantine, only the positive case need quarantine. So that was a bit of a sea change from what we were dealing with in the spring.
Okay. So yeah, add them, 100%.
But also, I would expect that would be how the quarantines would work now, right? We're going to minimize our quarantines. If everybody's in a mask, it should only be the one that's positive, right?
That's what it is now.
Okay.
Yeah. Chris, you good with the contents? And then Jim, please.
Yeah, and of course, whatever comment the board may have, I'll
Okay.
adapt accordingly, but I think I have a clear direction at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, sorry.
Yeah, clear this up for me. Alex, did you just say that, and also Chris, that the infection rates and information is not available per Hamlet?
That's what I was told.
Okay, so thinking that and then say, okay, how do we make a local decision if we don't have the figures?
Well,
I mean-
when we talked about our green, yellow, red, it was positivity rate by building. So we know what the positivity rate between the teachers and the kids and all the staff.
Within the district?
Within,
Okay.
say that again.
Within the district?
Within our
Okay.
district, yes. Please.
Jim, just to answer your question, Jim, we're part of an officer roundtable where we FaceTime and communicate with all of the presidents, vice presidents from all of the largest districts in our area.
All the town of Brookhaven, Smithtown, Sayville, and
I think what Mr. Vecchio was looking for, okay, when he called the county, was he was looking for the infection rate for children, okay, under 18 years old, which they said they don't document.
Yeah.
If you go on the COVID tracker for Suffolk County right now, you could type in Holbrook and see how many cases.
Yeah, it
there
doesn't
was.
break it down. Obviously, we would need to know
So
the
it
childhood
breaks it
positivity
down
rate.
by the number of people in the town, but not by children. But the thing is that that's helpful information too. If we see our infection rate is low in, all of the 5 or 6, townships that we service, or hamlets that we service, it'll give us a good idea as to where we're at. They will not record the number of cases with children getting sick and report that back to us.
Yeah.
That's the information
Yeah.
that they don't have.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the clarification was.
I apologize, Jim. It was childhood positivity rate. Anyone else? So we can, when we usually, Vinny, can you have that letter? Can I just see that for 1 second?
And again, Alex, just for the record, I think Sarah brought up a point. I don't think the board is asking to make medical decisions for kids. It's asking, again, for local control, so we can make decisions
Yeah.
based on data. It's not medical decisions, is my understanding. Right?
Whether to wear a mask or not to protect you is medical decision.
It's okay. We're going to have a difference of opinion. So what
Disagree.
we can do is we can write a letter. On the left here, when we write this letter, and I don't know, would you put it on the letterhead or Allison or? So just take Sarah's name off of it. It's okay that she disagrees and we could just take her name off of it.
Well, wait a second, you're
Yes,
taking
you have
her
to say that.
name
I
off, we
apologize. I
haven't
thought you
even
just said
seen the
that.
letter again.
Did you just say that you wanted your name off the letter? Yeah, that's what I thought she said, yeah. Jim?
I'm missing something. You're taking her name off the letter. What letter?
The letter that we're writing to the state.
So you, Sarah, you're off that letter no matter what it says.
Because
Okay.
we just gave details.
All right,
I think she heard.
I thought that was all of a sudden gonna be the letter, okay.
No, this was another one. I just was showing the side where our names were, that's all.
Alex?
Please get perspective in. Please.
There's this thing about letters, 'cause this was not, when I was on the board previously, this was not a practice, but if the board votes and it has a majority of the board votes to say, we're going to send this letter, well, maybe Krista Clayton, if the majority of the board votes to say they're going to send a letter, can a board member then remove their name from that? Because then it's not.
Chris, before you go, just quickly, just when, was it last year or the year before? I don't remember when it was. There was a controversial letter written, not all of us agreed. And I certainly, and again, you can ask legal whether or not that's legal to take the names off, but I would never ask somebody to write their name on something that they just didn't agree with. And I took my name off the other letter, and I would never ask Sarah, like if she's uncomfortable, I would never pressure her to put her name on something that, you know, if she's not going to sign it, I wouldn't want her name on it.
Yeah, but
That's just my question. Whether it's legal or not, I don't know.
There's nothing that mandates that a board member must have their name affixed to a letter, and I think we've always given the courtesy, as Alex has said, of having somebody be able to remove it. What can't happen, if a majority of the board says they want to send the letter, then the letter would go. The dissent of a minority couldn't keep the letter from being transmitted, but
But they
I
can't
think
keep
we've
their
always,
names
as an operational point, respected the individual choice to say, all right, if that goes on behalf of the board, I just don't want my name reflected as a signatory to it. And that's fine.
Okay, but that's still considered an action of the board though, right?
It is. It is, but it's just an action of the board that's reflective of the particular majority and participants who voted for it with respect to the individual who decided that they didn't want to affix their signature to it. That's not a fatal flaw in the action that the board takes. It's okay.
Okay.
Sarah? Good?
If it's not signed by us individually, it's the Board of Education, but my vote would be recorded as a no. So
Yeah, I'm just
would
saying,
be
if it was
fine.
you that
Yeah.
was supposed to sign it, I would say that the VP then would sign it at that point, yes.
Right, and
yes.
to and the record would reflect that Sarah did not want that to be, I mean, we're having this conversation in
Yeah.
public. This is the record of the meeting, and certainly, you know, it's being recorded. So to the extent that you're making it clear that that's not something you wish to participate in as an individual, that's perfectly respected, and it's your choice.
Anyone else? Good? Can I have a motion? Do we have to take a motion here to send a letter, or we're just charging you to write it?
Just take the motion, makes it easy.
Okay, I'll make the motion to write the letter, and based on any changes that anybody wants to make, we'll go there. Second by Rob. Question by Jim?
Again, I just don't want to drag this out, but what you're doing now is a motion to have him write the letter.
Yep.
And he'll email the letter to us.
Yep.
And at that point, we can make changes
If we need to make a
or
change.
say no, right?
Correct.
Okay, I'm good.
Correct.
I'm good.
All in favor? Opposed? Yep. Motion is carried. Good. Letter's out. Let's do public comment. Alyssa Akabakian. Oh, just while you're walking up, please, the microphone is there. Everyone's going to have 3 minutes. I ask, please, that everyone respects Mrs. Florio. She's going to be keeping the time. When she gives you the time, just start wrapping it up so that we have about 20, 25 cards here so that everyone gets a chance to speak. And just talk into the microphone. We have a little bit harder of a time hearing that microphone than the rest of them. Yep. Sorry. They're usually close.
Hello? Good. I come here tonight as a defeated, disappointed parent. Even though we are no longer in a state of emergency and the governor has no right to place a mask mandate, I feel as if you were waiting for this. The choice was already made for the board so that you can blame appropriate people around you. I sit here for hours and I could give you statistics until we're all blue in the face of things that are actually affecting our children, unlike COVID. Things like depression, suicide, poverty, and illiteracy. But like I said, it doesn't matter. This choice was made a while ago. So instead, I'll just give you some insight on some of the effects of today's decisions. For starters, as an educational body, I feel like you just started participating in segregation. By taking away parents' choice, you're forcing families to look elsewhere for education. Some will go to private, some will rely on religious schools, and others like me with several children, mine also having special needs and IEPs, I could never afford a private school. So I'll be looking into homeschooling like many other families. Some families are even fleeing the state. all of which is creating a further divide amongst our district and within our community. Not only do your words of segregation speak volumes, but your actions match with the secret rollout of DEI, SEL, or CASAL, also known as critical race theory, or CRT. It's just disguised under a different acronym, and yet just another act of segregation nicely taught to our children. Secondly, you are now one step closer into forcing our staff into getting vaccinated. Let's not pretend that you're giving them a choice when the unvaccinated teachers are being called out for weekly testing. The vaccinated are just as likely to get and transmit COVID just as much as the unvaccinated. Are you going to test all teachers and staff, or just the few that you decide to go into their personal medical information? What's going to happen when half of your entire staff, not just the teachers, but the entire staff, leaves after you discriminate against them? What are you going to do when a fourth of Sachem students pull out based on tonight's decision? What are you going to do when the next illness or the next vaccine comes out and you, the board members, find yourself not agreeing with the next vaccine? You've let politics creep into our schools, and you've let money persuade you into taking away our children's most basic rights. My children are not sick. Their teachers are not sick. Their peers are not sick. The air is not toxic, and I'm not going to teach my children. We are still sitting here speaking about masks when I remind you that all of outside of New York has been going to school without masks on. I shouldn't have to live in a different state for my children to live that same life, to be normal children. On a more personal note, maybe it was my love for history, or maybe it was just really good teachers that I had. But what I learned in these very buildings, in these specific very buildings, I learned that when you start segregating people for whatever the reason may be, it's not okay. It's not. And when we look back in time at this moment, I just want to know, are you guys going to be okay with what you say, with what you do? Or are you going to be standing on the wrong side of history? Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your efforts in putting that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Daniel and Elizabeth Sandler. That mic comes out if you need to pull it out. There you go.
I have asthma. I hate masks because I will be sent home from school for wheezing, and I won't be able to learn and see my friends because the mask won't let me breathe. But does it really matter to you that I can't breathe?
Good job, Daniel.
I would like to make a quote from the Bible, 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 3 and 4. For the time will come when men will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around great numbers of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. Years from now, when you reflect on your service on Sachem's Board of Education, will you say, I listened to the truth or turned my ears away? Or will you say, I followed the mandates and not the law? I succumbed to extortion. I masked thousands of children despite their pleas of high anxiety, migraines, nosebleeds, and respiratory problems like my son standing next to me with asthma. Join other like-minded school districts and fight together for our kids. Join the lawsuit against the mandates. We are one of the largest school districts on Long Island. If we don't make a stand, who will? And I like I respect your choice not to sign that letter, Laura. So respect
hold
my
on.
choice to make my kids unmasked. Thank you.
Laura, yeah, I got it. I'll do it.
Thank you, please.
Just quickly, Sarah decided not to. What I'd like to do is, there are going to be speakers, like Laura said earlier, just to echo some things, that are going to be completely in disagreement with you, whether it's us, whether it's somebody in the audience. And what I would like to do is, for the kids that are about to go to school next week, let's act. We don't want to turn into what happened in Smithtown and Mount Sinai and Locust Valley the other day. We can disagree, and we can have heated discussions. We have heated discussions sometimes, but we can be respectful while doing it, I think. And I just would like to make sure that we don't call out any singular board member, or we don't make comments when somebody says something that you don't agree with, please. Maria Camino? Sir, you're the same individual from last meeting. I'm going to ask you not to call out. I can't have it all meeting. Let everybody, I see you. You don't have to wave. Let everybody speak. Let everybody speak.
Hello? Okay. I am here again to speak out against politically fueled and unconstitutional mandates that are causing mental and physical havoc on our children. They do not provide any beneficial health benefits and are not based on scientific data. The choice to make decisions for the health and well-being belongs to the parents. Now, let's speak about the elephant in the room. Let's take a look at who is forcing these mandates and rules. It is the current resident occupying the White House who calls himself the President of the United States Commander-in-Chief. This person has negotiated with terrorists, 13 U.S. military paid with their lives. He's abandoned military men and women, Americans and allies. He left behind tons of U.S. military weapons and defense equipment to the enemy. I believe this did not happen by mistake, nor that it was unforeseen circumstances that led to this disaster. But let's say that those mistakes were unforeseen and led to this disaster. Either way, it shows his incompetence and dangerous leadership and his inability to make sound decisions. This is what is implementing the mandates for the safety of our children. None of his actions provide any safety. So this person who doesn't have the ability to make sound decisions, the person we want to trust or believe is going to keep our children safe? Who here believes he is capable of providing any kind of safety to anyone? I don't. If there is anyone, please share with me what makes you believe that. Maybe you know something I don't. I too want to feel safe. What horrifies me is the compliance of some to negotiate our God-given rights. These rights are not negotiable. They are given to us by God, not by government. We can all talk till we are blue in the face, but until we all unite, stand strongly together, and stop complying and pushing back, we will lose our children, freedoms, and nation. My last point, if these mandates are based on science, I would like the Board of Ed, the government, or someone to show us that data and that proof. Everyone should have the freedom to take actions as they seem fit to protect themselves. There is proven data that vaccinated people can and have spread the virus, and masks don't prevent anything but oxygen intake and germ spreading. But providing that data will never happen because there is none.
Ma'am, that's 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
But there is plenty to show harm, notice, and I'm almost done, and data that is presented or even spoken about by government officials. Okay, we do not and will not co-parent with the government. The government is not our leader or keeper. God is. So why is there so much compliance and truth? I wish trust. I wish this was a nightmare, because that means that we would wake up at some point and
Ma'am,
this would
please
be
wrap
over.
up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Negotiation time is over. It is not working. We must stand united and strong and take back our rights.
Thank you. Meredith Volpe?
First of all, I'd like to apologize for my lack of mask. I looked at the SCTA's website on Facebook yesterday, and I realized that masks are probably still optional. If you look at their pictures, you'll see why I'm saying that. My speech was actually written before Alex came up with what he did tonight, so I appreciate that, and so some of it will echo what he said. Here we are with the mandates. They're in place, and you have your marching orders. Your jobs just got easier, and your hands are tied. Nothing you can do, right? Wrong. While I understand you're not willing to outwardly defy the governor's mask mandate, that doesn't mean you roll over and hide behind them and just accept them. Why did any of you get involved in education or administration in a school district? It was for the kids. Why did the 9 of you run for a seat on the board? I would hope it was to put the kids first. I know some of you use that as a catchy hashtag in your running. I hope it wasn't just that for you. I hope now is the time for you to prove that it wasn't just a hashtag to you. It's time to put these kids first. It's time to make a positive difference in their lives every day. Which of you remembers a teacher or a parent telling you, think outside the box? Now we call it critical thinking, and sadly our kids now lack that because the adults are no longer demanding that of them. We don't demand that they think outside the box. We're not thinking outside the box lately. None of us wants to raise a bunch of rebels, but we have to stop accepting what our government is shoving down our throats. We have to say it's time to question things, especially when it doesn't make sense right in front of our eyes. We need to stand up for our kids, stop taking the easy road, and start working hard, making things right for these Sachem children. It's time to start questioning what doesn't make sense. We're being told masks by all in schools when no one has given us scientific proof that they help or that they are safe for prolonged use. As a matter of fact, we have proof that issues are arising because of these masks. So then we are told, if you don't abide by these mandates, the penalty could be $1,000 a day per kid. So that's $12 million a day for Sachem. Does that make any sense to anyone? Does that sound absurd? Does it sound enforceable? Does it seem nonsensical? Do any of you ever question this? Do you sit at home and wonder how this will ever be enforced? Or do you just sit there masked and mundane and follow along like a good little Stepford society? Time to stand up and question any of this. Where does this end? With this virus, the next one? We have flu season, strep season. When will this end? It's time that we reach out to the powers that be and remind them that running your school district is unique. It's not their job, it's yours. It's what each of the administrators on Long Island make a 6-figure salary to do. If the government's gonna come in and do it, we don't need a school district anymore. We don't need administrators anymore. This is not communist China. Our children do not belong to the government. We are asking you to hire a law firm, and I don't want to hear that you're waiting to hear data. Other people have already done it. It means we can take a stand. We are the 2nd largest school district on Long Island. It's time for us to lead and not follow. We don't need to follow everyone else. We are leaders. We've always been leaders. It's time to get it going.
That was 3 minutes. Thank you.
One quick thing. We can't all possibly agree on this, and I'm not asking for any of us to do it. My friend Laura said, we won't always agree, but one thing we need to agree on is that we need to have freedom of choice. And when you start to give up freedom, remember, you're only one generation away from extinction. And we don't need to be that generation.
Dr. Brooks Camino? Yeah.
Thanks again, everybody. This will be quick. Just to preface, kind of where I'm coming from. I was very pro-mask in the very beginning. We didn't know what this was. I went to work in a gas mask for 6 weeks after I decided it was safe for me to go back. I have my vaccine. I think it's a great thing. I think people that want it should get it. It's very effective, okay? But to sit here, and especially now, I just draw a conclusion from the last board meeting that I spoke at. There was only one person up on this board wearing a mask last week. Now everybody is, with the exception of one person. And we were in a teeny tiny room. Everybody was crammed together. It was a much more dangerous place than this. I mean, it's an auditorium with 10% filled. And the fact remains that all of you are exponentially in more danger than any of our kids from being hospitalized or dying from COVID. And that's just statistically true. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but we can't lead with anecdotes, firsthand case studies. That is not research. Research is data. Research is looking at the numbers. Look at Australia has been locked down for weeks, and they are spiking like crazy. The UK, the same exact thing. Japan, everyone wears a mask in Japan. I think they have 98% mask compliance. And they have spiked uncontrollably. So I think, Fauci was right in February 2020. Masks might make you feel a little bit better, but they're not really doing anything with an aerosolized virus because it escapes the mask. If you look at research out of the University of Waterloo, they found that the cloth and surgical mask block just 10% of particles. That's nothing. They found that an N95 blocks just 50% of particles escaping the mask. Now, it's really effective when you're breathing in because it makes suction to your face and prevents those particles from getting in. So, I'm in favor. If there are children at this district, they feel like wearing an N95 is going to protect them, they should do that. They should have the freedom to do that. Whereas, we should have the freedom to say, you know what, this is a risk that we're willing to take based on the numbers. The risk assessment is something that we do every single day. Are we going to drive 80 miles an hour in the left-hand lane? We're able to do this. And I understand you guys are trying to balance quarantine and everything else, but just ask yourselves, how often are you guys all wearing masks in your daily lives? I mean, again, just back to that last meeting, I know that you guys don't believe in the efficacy of masks because when you didn't have to do it, you didn't do it. So now to turn around now and say, oh, well, we got to wear the mask because they're effective. You guys know that they are not, and that was evidenced at the last meeting. So, and it's not to disparage anybody. It's just to pull back the curtain and just understand what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with logic, like Alex said. We're not dealing with it. What is the endpoint? What are the metrics?
Ma'am, I'm sorry, that was 3 minutes.
That's 3? Okay, I will just leave it with this. Alex, I applaud you for being the only one courageous enough to take a stand up there without a mask. And lastly, courage is standing up for what you really believe in, even if that means that you have to stand alone. Thank you.
Jessica Schreck.
Hello. I would like to again address the board regarding concerns I have. I preface this with the fact that I respect each and every one of you, regardless of differing views, for volunteering your time. However, I hope to gain more insight and understanding, and I mean no disrespect, and truly just seek to have more clarity. Over the past several months, I've heard most board members, as well as the district's legal counsel, state they're not in favor of mask mandates. I have also heard many parents request more transparency and disclosure on what the district is doing regarding that. We requested more to be done to advocate and set precedents for the school year regarding parental choice. I yet again sent out thoughtful and polite emails, only to be met with by silence by the majority of the board. While some may not understand that you are obligated to follow the parameters set by New York State, I understand that. I don't want to be cavalier with the district's budget. I would hate to lose our newly appointed superintendent. He's done a fabulous job this year. If you don't think for 1 second a vaccine mandate isn't around the corner after this mask one, you're mistaken. Now is the time for decisive and unified action. So my questions to the board, and I hope you ask yourselves that, is what is the reason for inaction on advocacy and working with other like-minded districts? What are the legal and correct pathways to advocate for this change, and are you, the board, willing to do them? I recognize that you cannot answer these questions, and I'm happy to hear that these dialogues are had, but I hope out of mutual respect that I have of you for doing what you feel as a board is correct, you will think about these things out of respect for me and me advocating for what I feel is best for my children. My daughters are nervous to start school instead of being happy and excited. I know there are differing views, and I may not agree with a third of the room, but I genuinely feel for any parent fighting what they feel is right for their family, because I have not walked in their shoes. I promise every single one of you, my daughters will love your children the same. You're welcome to play with my kids anytime. I respect and value your opinions. That's the difference between respect and tyranny. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Michelle Favaro Campbell?
Hi, I am the mother of 2 children. One just graduated and one is a sophomore at Sachem East. For those of you who don't know me, I've spent the last decade advocating for the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force at Sachem. If you've listened to the discussions I've had with the Board of Education for more than 10 years and through 3 administrations before it got approved, you would know that I've always been transparent and honest in my goals. That our children attend a school with a diverse staff, that we expand our classroom and school libraries to better reflect the populations of the schools, and that the books reflect all races, religions, family types, and abilities. You'll recall that I asked that our books include children in wheelchairs, hearing impairments, children with ADHD, autism, as well as other abilities. I asked that we looked at curriculum and began to expand to not only teach about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks during Black History Month, and that we teach fuller histories on more than just those 2 figures, as well as look at our English curriculum and add more diverse authors. After we got approval, during the first year of our meeting, we had students from both high schools attending. We heard stories about children, actually high school students, not being welcomed into their friends' homes because they came out as gay, saying that they never had teachers that looked like them, and I know that for a fact because my child is in Sachem East as a sophomore and has never once walked in to a school classroom with a teacher that looked like him, including substitutes.
Mrs. Favaro, we purposely did not live stream that committee
No, I
because
know,
we didn't
but
want
I'm
personal.
talking, hold on, I'm not naming
Well, this is actually
children.
not your meeting, so just stop for 1 second and listen to what I have to say. We'll stop your time. We purposely did not live stream that committee so that personal stories did not get shared with everybody. Well, just wait for me to finish, and I promise you'll have as much time as you want. I don't think it's appropriate that you're sharing stories from other people of feelings and other stories that they
Okay,
have.
I'm trying to talk about the fact that we have parents who are coming to these meetings, talking about the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force, about, and I'll skip them personal stories if you'd like, but I did not name students. I'm naming.
But we know who was on the committee.
What?
know
Nobody
who-
knows who, nobody knows who's on the, nobody knows the students.
Okay.
And not one person knows actual kids. Hold
Don't-
on.
don't yell out.
Why is people yelling at me? I didn't yell at anyone.
You have-
And
hold on
I'm
one
also
second, Mrs.
talking about the fact that students in general have felt, and I also talked about my own student, and my own goals for the, and when I'm the one who advocated for it for over a decade.
Your child is your child.
Thank you for that. Instead of our community embracing and working with the committee, we've had people coming up here who have read memes and Facebook posts and think that we're focused on legal and PhD level studies. It's simply untrue. I have a bachelor's in creative studies. I was a theater major at Hofstra. We have people coming in to our school board meetings terrified that their children are going to learn something hateful, when in fact, we're talking about the opposite problem that we're trying to resolve. We're trying to talk about children being accepted and knowing that they belong here and that we want them here. I started speaking about this to Mr. Nolan 10 years ago, and it stands the same way today. Anyone who thinks differently about this committee is not paying attention to the realities that are being faced by all of our students today. It's not anything to do with anything that's being taught at a graduate level in our colleges and our law schools. And anyone who wants to question me about the reasons that I advocated for this when my child started kindergarten, who is now at a university, can talk to me personally about it, but that is the truth. So I know we have people who are coming to the school board meetings and using acronyms that they likely have never studied either. But I was literally a theater major and had no other motive than to make our children understand that our curriculum isn't fully realized for a lot of these students.
That was 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Johnson?
Hi, my name is Zoe, and I'm going to second grade. I believe that math should be a choice. Please help fight for the children of Sachem and their freedom. We all deserve freedom of choice. Let's continue to wash our hands and use hand sanitizer. In first grade, I got a bad rash on my face because of the masks. We need to breathe free. I want to see my friend's face and to see if they are happy or sad. It is hard to speak clearly under a mask. It took almost a year for me to see my friends and teachers' faces. How is that normal? Here is an option. Let's replace desks with restaurant tables. Then we can take our masks off at our table. We all know the reason why. Please unmask us. Thank you for listening.
Great job. Rebecca Murray? Davis.
Hi, everyone. I don't like to speak in public, so I'm going to do this. I figure you could see my face. I've sent so many emails over the last few months. First off, I don't condone bullying whatsoever. I've been bullied in the past, so have my kids. I respect everyone's choice on being masked or not. With that being said, I have 3 kids. My husband and I also graduated Sachem, so we decided to raise our family here. I want to speak about the mental and physical health of my kids and masks. I have 2 kids in Chippewa and 1 in Sagamore. I know I've sent many emails, like I already said, sorry. This last school year, my youngest was in kindergarten. He had the best teacher. She taught my 2 oldest, so I knew he was in good hands. But day after day, he came home from school telling me how much he hated school. Because as we know, kindergarten is all about socializing and being able to play with his friends. He had acne from wearing his mask and asked me every day if he had to wear a mask. And of course, unfortunately, every day I said yes, because he needed to be in school. 3 weeks into school, he had to have a COVID test, and he screamed for 20 minutes after. Come to find out, he only had allergies. My daughter, who was in 4th grade, was getting headaches, which she has never had prior to being masked, for hours on end. And by the end of the school year, anxiety because of the masks. I kept her home for a mental health day the day after masks were required back in June. I spoke with the principal and her teacher, called my daughter, and said, please come back, we miss you, and she did. After that, thankfully, she also had an amazing teacher, and after that, my daughter felt better. Now for my 13-year-old son, I had a call from the nurse's office at Sagamore saying he was having chest pains. That was during gym class while masked. We brought him to the cardiologist. Come to find out, he has a leaky heart valve. And as I spoke with a friend in a medical school, He said it's dangerous for him to be masked in that condition. The masks are taking a toll on children. Why aren't the issues that masks are causing kids ever being taken into consideration? I feel like it is ignored when we as parents speak out about them. I know your hands are tied with the governor, with the new governor, but what can the parents that just want choice to help you fight against this mask mandate? We will be happy to help in any way. As of tomorrow, my 2 youngest will have a new teacher. Her name is Mrs. Murray. My oldest will be going to 8th grade in school because he is fine with wearing a mask, and I honor freedom of choice. I will be moving out of the state, so thank you. This is my first and last time I would be speaking, and thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Maureen Weiss? No? I see people moving. I don't know if anybody's coming. Kristen Dukas? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dukas.
I hate pronouncing your names wrong.
Good evening, everyone. I implore you to rise up and take matters into your own hands. The days of sitting around and waiting for mandates or sending letters every once in a while to pacify parents is over. Actions speak louder than words, and we want to see less talking and more doing. Show us that you will no longer be complacent and help us regain our freedom by going up against the state. In speaking about the mask mandate, one superintendent stated to Newsday, and I quote, "I think almost every superintendent in New York would be thrilled. It takes that issue off our collective laps," end quote. Allowing the state to make every single decision because you are suddenly not comfortable to think on your own is inexcusable. You need to talk to the other districts who believe in freedom of choice. Let's set up a big meeting with them to discuss ideas. I know for a fact that parents would love to be involved and help you with this. We want to do this together with the administration, teachers, and parents so we are one cohesive unit. The state may be strong-arming you, but you do not have to cower in fear. What happens if the state were to mandate corporal punishment? Do parents need to be worried that you'll allow it to happen because of your fear of repercussions? At what point do we draw the line for our children's health? Something that also needs to be pointed out is that this masking mandate is based off an outbreak that happened in January 2020 on a Navy ship and foreign studies from Thailand and China, none of which were done in schools and couldn't be further unrelatable to what is happening in New York. This mandate was also made without checks and balances. That in itself speaks volumes about the unwillingness to be transparent. This fight is so much bigger than just masks. We know what's coming next. The emergency authorization for kids 5 to 11 will be approved in just a few short months. The state will say, get vaccinated or get tested. Then, once the vaccine becomes approved, the story will change to get vaccinated or get kicked out of public school. This is exactly why we need you right now to stand up and tell Governor Kathy Hochul and Dr. Zucker that enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren Muckatesh?
Hi, it's actually Mukatosh.
I'm sorry, thank you.
That's okay. It's spelled funny, I know. I've spoken at board meetings before. Most of the board and Dr. Pelletieri know my name. I'm sure I send lots of emails and call a lot. I'm here tonight as the mother of 2 elementary age children, a 4th grader and an incoming kindergartner who has a significant speech delay. Again, I'll repeat that, a significant speech delay. He's 3rd percentile for pronunciation. He's this big. He looks like he's 3. Yet I stand here tonight because my children cannot be vaccinated, and I ask you to keep the mask mandate in place. Do not sign on to this ridiculous misadventure of a class action lawsuit because a very vocal minority wants something different than what the rest of the community is asking you to do. Masks keep our children safe. My pediatrician, my son's allergist, my own PCP, my mother, my aunt who's a nurse, and thousands of medical professionals and scientists, some of who are in the audience, members of your own community, tell you that masks and social distancing work. There was no spread or virtually little spread in schools last year because our kids washed their hands, because they kept distance, because they wore masks. I'm not downplaying that there are children who have medical issues. I feel very horribly for the children with asthma, with diabetes, with cardiac issues, and if it's appropriate, these children should be given medical exemptions to wearing masks in order to accommodate them, just like we would any other disability. But I am asking you as a community member, and there are other people who will speak after me, listen to the science, listen to our medical professionals, keep our children safe until they can be vaccinated or until the Delta variant has come down and we're not at a 5% positivity rate. Our positivity numbers look like they did in January. Thank you.
Tony Garcia?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I came here tonight to talk about, obviously, masks, but more importantly, the practical side of it, as we've talked about there being quarantining and having to quarantine more children if they weren't wearing masks. And as I've sat here tonight, I've listened to a lot of very valid concerns, parents whose children have had problems, concerns about their future, about mental health, which are all valid concerns. But one of the things that has also come through tonight is the belief that public health is an individual decision. And it's just not. It can't be. What I do affects you. What you do affects me. So when you're deliberating this, and this is a difficult decision, an answer you have to find, and I don't envy you the path you have to go down to find it. Children require rules. Now, while there are exceptions for those and need to be for those who have health issues, children have rules. You don't give them options for which they can't possibly know the consequences of their decisions. So I ask you, masks help people. They don't help people when I wear a mask and no one else does. They help when we all do. It's public health. And so I ask you to keep that in mind. That will never be an individual decision. And I think we all have to find a solution that does one thing, and that's keep our kids in school. Keep them healthy and keep them in school. Not being quarantined, not because one person believes one thing and another person believes another. We have to have one standard. And that standard has to be one that keeps kids healthy and in school and with whatever modicum of safety that we can provide for them. I have a 7-year-old daughter. I don't have the option to get her vaccinated. And quite frankly, with the outbreak of the Delta variant and rising numbers, particularly in places where masks have largely been abandoned, I don't know what's in the future for her. I don't know what's in the future for when she wants to go visit my father, who is on oxygen. And if he ever catches this, he's got no chance at all. Her chances of not bringing that in don't directly have to do with her wearing a mask. It's because she's wearing a mask, and so is everyone else. So I thank you again for the time tonight, and I ask you to remember that you have to make a decision for us all, and it's going to affect all of us equally. And you have to make sure that that decision is one that is not to suddenly open the gates, because we saw where that leads and the sort of situations of people being in the hospital, higher and growing uncontrolled positivity rates, lockdowns and quarantines. We have options that are fairly simple that help us and help protect us. We need to take advantage of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Anastasia Sanchez?
Hi, my name is Anastasia Sanchez, and I'm a freshman at North. A couple questions I've heard are, do we still have to wear a mask, and are we going to be wearing a mask? The answer is yes. I'm vaccinated and I have no problem wearing a mask. According to the CDC, even if you're fully vaccinated, you can still carry COVID. So you probably won't get COVID, but you can still carry it and give it to unvaccinated people. It is very easy to get COVID, especially children. Kids under the age of 12 are still not eligible to get the vaccines, so they are still at an even higher risk. Over 38 million confirmed cases and over 4 million have been children. Over 632,000 COVID deaths, and about 400 were children in the US. I'm concerned for my safety, my friend's safety, and my family's safety. My brother is going into 5th grade, and I know if he got COVID, I'd be scared because you never know what can happen. Schools are very crowded with hundreds of students. We may be 6 feet or 3 feet apart in classrooms, but in hallways we're very close to each other, and if we don't have a mask on, COVID would spread very fast. Wearing a mask helps a lot more than people think, and I think we should all be wearing one and wearing it correctly. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you very much. Rebecca Sanchez?
All right. Hi, guys. So I am nervous. I don't do well speaking publicly, but I am coming to you guys as a licensed social worker, a professional in mental health. Specifically, I've worked with children in a specialized school setting and in an outpatient clinic setting. I've worked with children for over 9 years, but I've been a social worker for over 16 years. So to specifically talk about the mental health issues, yes, our children are traumatized. Yes, the adults are traumatized. The whole world is traumatized right now because of the pandemic. Unfortunately, removing masks will not remove that trauma. It is a small solution to a very complex problem with many, many different layers. When the kids stayed home, they're more likely to be in an environment where they don't have food, maybe they have abusive parents or something like that. It's not just the masks. Additionally, mask works better, obviously, when everybody's wearing them, not just when one person is. So if we go to parent choice, and many of the parents will choose that their kids don't need to wear masks, but mine do, it takes away my choice to send my child to a safe school. I absolutely agree that I want more information. You want to send this letter and find more information about what the measurements are on why they're making these decisions. I don't want a blind mandate for no reason. I don't even want to wear a mask, but I do because that is what the evidence is showing helps. I started to go maskless because I was vaccinated and they said, you know what, everyone, we don't need a mask. Great, wonderful. But now they're saying the cases are going back up. I put my mask back on. And then as far as the trauma and the mental health issues, again, our kids feed off of our energy. So if we are traumatized and our trauma response is anger and hatred and disgust, they are going to pick up on that and feel that way too. So the best way is to calmly speak to them about your feelings, but let them have their own voice. Don't add to their trauma. I guess that's it.
Darlene DeFabio?
All right. So I'm going to just go through a couple of things. It'll be questions that I know you can't respond to now, but I'm hoping that maybe you can write this information down and at the next meeting maybe address some of the concerns. I wasn't planning on speaking initially, but there's been so much numbers and false statements that have been thrown out that I almost feel compelled to come up here because there's a lot of information that's being used inaccurately. It's being twisted. It's not factual, and it's leading in this whole debate. There shouldn't even be a mask debate. The CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the largest nurses union in the country, as well as teachers unions, are all in 100% agreement that masks should be worn in tight areas where transmission is high. Now, I understand we want local control, and I agree with that too. But you keep saying the state hasn't provided metrics, and you're telling me your metrics are positivity based on school, but what would those positivity rates look like? You say red, yellow, green, but what positivity rate do we need to be in a red zone? Maybe that data is there and I missed it, but I don't know that answer. Right now, if you look at the CDC map of transmission, it shows that we are blanket red for our county, right? So if that's a blanket red transmission level now, and you're trying to advocate for choices in wearing masks, then what would we need in order to get you on board to have that mandate? I just don't find that you're providing enough clear metrics. So I'm all for having local control, but I would expect that you guys provide that information to us so we can make an informed choice as well. As far as questions about whether or not masks work, they do work. They worked all last year. We had very few cases in our buildings because we followed public health safety protocols. You remove those protocols and cases go up. We removed masks and cases went up. And yes, nobody wants to be in this pandemic. It is a global pandemic. It is not unique to New York. New York is not the only state that has mandates. The United States is not the only country that requires it. Several countries around the world are going through the same thing that we are, and several other states have the same mandates that we have in effect. If you want to get out of the pandemic, whether you like to hear this or not, vaccines are the way out of the pandemic. All right, so you need more people to get vaccinated so we don't have more mutations to create more variants that put us back in this position where even vaccinated people have to put a mask on. You are 17 times more likely to be hospitalized if you are not vaccinated and catch COVID, and you are 5 times more likely to catch COVID if you are unvaccinated than not vaccinated. So yeah, how many of you wore an umbrella or a raincoat to come in here? How many of you are going to run out of here covering your heads, hoping to not get wet with the downpour? You're going to protect yourself. Even though some water is going to touch you, there's a risk of you getting wet. You're still going to try and protect yourself. So to say that we don't need vaccines is ridiculous. They will get us out of this even if they're not 100% effective. Higher vaccines, lower transmission. And I don't know what this deal is with everybody running from vaccines. We've been mandating vaccines for nearly 200 years. You know the list of vaccines that people had to get to come to school? All of a sudden now we can't have a new vaccine? You want to protest this? Are we going to backtrack and protest every other vaccine mandate that our kids needed in order to come to school?
That was 3 minutes. Thank you.
Fine.
Thank you. I apologize if I butcher your last name. Is Dr. Azad Gukwa? Please feel free to correct me. I apologize.
Gukwa is fine.
Thank you.
I'm a parent of 2 children in the Sachem School District, one in elementary school and the other entering middle school this academic year. I'm here to speak about the importance of a universal mask mandate in our schools. I have dedicated half my life to science. Scientific literacy is a skill in which one is able to use data to evaluate the quality of science information that is being communicated. Much of what has been said in these meetings by those who oppose mask mandates were full of misinformation that favors their own biases. Dr. Pelletieri and this board themselves had said that our schools were not a significant source of spread last year. There are many reasons for that, including but not limiting to cohorting of students, distancing in the classroom, improved ventilation, disinfection protocols, and of course, the requirement of masks for all faculty, staff, and students. Last September, the Alpha variant was still the predominant strain in our area. Now we are dealing with Delta, which has been associated with greater transmissibility and higher viral loads in individuals. A recent study published just last week modeled the transmission of Delta in K-12 school populations and found that the Delta variant sharply increases the risk of COVID transmission in schools when compared to the Alpha variant. They also concluded that their findings demonstrate that, quote, schools are not inherently low risk, yet can be made so with high community vaccination coverages and universal masking, unquote. However, our children under 12 still do not have the option to be vaccinated. It is disheartening when individuals come up here and speak about the fatality rate associated with COVID-19, when 650,000 people have lost their lives. And even more so when they use the number of 400 children, because they are not just numbers, they are children. Children that belong to families, and I'm sure if it was someone in our community or one of our own, you would not say the same. I thank you for doing what is right and following the science, and for going along with the guidelines that have been set forth by experts in infectious disease and epidemiology. These guidelines were based on data that have consistently found that masks reduce the transmission of respiratory diseases. Without a universal mask mandate in place, our children will need to continuously quarantine. I think one thing that we can all agree on is, after all of this, the best thing for all of our students is to be in school full-time, in person as much as possible. A mask mandate is the primary mitigation strategy that would facilitate this. I urge you to continue prioritizing the safety of our children and the greater community. Thank you.
Thank you. Janine Amarato?
Hi, Dr. Pelletieri. Emma wrote another letter. She couldn't be here tonight. Right now, she's still dancing. But this is from my daughter. Good evening, board members and Sachem community. The last time I spoke was on June 16th. I'll refresh your memory a little bit. I was the girl that spoke about the 7 habits and coming together as one. Obviously, no one has listened to me. So now I'm going to try a different approach. This political garbage needs to stop. It is not about what side of the fence we stand on now. Put your political parties aside and help the children. A few weeks ago, I watched the board meeting with my mom, and I saw a few new people get sworn in and take an oath. Congratulations to the new members. All of you at one point have done the same. You have took an oath to the Constitution and to the people, to serve the people of our community. Now I've watched you put your hand on a Bible and swore to uphold your oath. Now, I'm not telling you what to believe in, and I'm not here to preach, but I'm here to make a point. I am a believer in the Almighty Father. I read my Bible and I follow it the best I can. Did you know that there are 613 commandments, not just 10? If I was to break the laws of the land, the Almighty Father wouldn't be too happy. Everyone makes mistakes and nobody's perfect. He doesn't expect us to be, but he does expect us to try to do the right thing. The point I'm trying to make is, please don't put your hand on a Bible and swear on it if you cannot uphold your oath. The way I see it is, you made a promise to him. If you cannot keep that oath, if you cannot keep that promise, then I think you need to rethink your positions. Ask yourselves another question. Are you sitting in that seat to help the children, or are you going to feed us to the devil? I get your jobs aren't easy and no answer is right or wrong. You can't make everyone happy, but we must find balance. You can't just keep listening to the banana heads that run this state. They don't care about you, and they certainly don't care about what's best for the children. We are not a threat to anyone. We are all God's children. All I'm asking from you is that please don't take information at face value. You need to see all things and prove all things. That's also in the Bible that you swore on. I can't speak for everyone, but I can speak for myself, and all I ask for is choice. With choice, this community needs to understand and relearn, agree to disagree. It is my belief we need to do what's best for ourselves and respect other people's choices. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. If you feel comfortable, go for it. I'm not here to judge. Only the big man can do that. You say potato, I say potato. Are you getting my point? This is also called free will, and God created this, and it's the gift of choice. So please, for the love of humanity, stop disliking people for their choices that other people make. Just because we think differently doesn't mean we have to hate each other. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, we must learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish as fools. Right now, this world all looks like a bunch of fools because nobody can respect one another. This world is so flipped upside down that let's start turning it back in the Sachem community in hopes that others will follow. Let Sachem be the leader, not the follower, and maybe, just maybe, we can show some each other respect that we once had for one another. Love thy neighbor. Don't let evil destroy us. We are better than that, and we are one nation under God.
Thank you.
And that is from my daughter.
Dominique Barrault.
Hello. I come here today as a parent of 2 children at the elementary school level. My daughter was a remote learner for the first 2 months last year, and that was after the entire school was quarantined for the 3 or 4 months before. I saw firsthand what she was missing by physically not being in school. We unfortunately lost 2 family members to COVID, my mother-in-law and an aunt of ours. Wearing a mask doesn't just protect the children in school. We all know that numbers of fatalities and hospitalizations are lower with children. However, we don't know who those children could pass this on to. Relatives, community members. There are 40,000 children in the United States that have been orphaned from COVID. What would we do if one of those people were in our community? So I'm coming here today to let you know face to face, even though I don't really leave my house still. I work remote, I go shopping for food, and I see just close family in my bubble. And I came here today for 3 hours to sit in a room with people without masks because I wanted you to know, and I want the community to know, that there is a lot of people at home that believe in mask wearing for the community. They might not come here because this is not a safe space for a lot of people, not health-wise, not diversity-wise. And I strongly encourage that these meetings be held on Zoom. And that's not just for the pandemic, that's in perpetuity. It needs to be accessible to the community of taxpayers. So I support the use of masks indoors, and they need to be wearing them in order to keep the kids in school where they belong. Thank you very much.
Mr. Barone, just quickly, we are receiving your emails. It was supposed to be on the agenda tonight, but we wiped everything clean just to make sure we talked about the reopening plan. I promise you that talking about Zoom will be on the next agenda.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Denise Stevenson.
Good evening. It's getting late, so I'll keep it short. I know that there's nothing I can say to change the mind of people here, but I'm here to vote. I'm here to tell you that I support the mask mandate. I do not support joining with other districts to fight the mask mandate. Please do not waste the taxpayers' money or the taxpayers' time. Our children are not all vaccinated, and therefore I support the mask mandate. Please help us to protect our community. Thank you.
Maria Sanders.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to change it up a little bit tonight. I'm going to start by saying thank you to prior and present administration, guidance department, Board of Ed trustees, and the SCL team for promoting inclusivity and equity for all students in Sachem. But a lot more work needs to be done. Just bear with me, please, because this is a little bit of a difficult conversation. Last meeting, I was away, so I was listening to this board meeting, and I listened to a parent speak. And their words have haunted me since that day. I transcribed a piece of what they said, and I'm going to quote it. Apparently, he was sat at a table that had autistic children or whatever. And he would say, Mommy, I think the other kids think that I'm autistic because I sit, like it was a shit show. That's an exact quote. Let me let everybody know, autism isn't contagious. Neurodiverse children aren't lepers. They're not different, they're not weird, and they shouldn't be looked at as such. Parents in this very room, there are many, many parents in this very room that have children with special needs. We need to do better. We need to be better. We need to encourage our children to interact with other children that are a little bit different. The cafeteria, which is what was being discussed, is a great equalizer for children. It's a place where they could come together, children of all abilities. And I implore every single parent to encourage their child to take a minute and get to know a child that may be a little different and accept them for who and what they are. I implore our parents to understand that their words matter. Think before you speak. Think of who is listening to you. Remember, our children are listening to each and every one of us. Be better, do better, hold yourselves to a higher standard. Because when we hear words like what I just said at a board meeting, we understand what children are listening to, and we understand what they're bringing into their buildings. This board, and like I said, the prior administrations have done so much. I'm not talking about CRT. I'm talking about SEL, social emotional learning. That is what SACHM teaches, and it needs to be understood. What SACHM, I've been a parent in the district for, 14 years. My daughter was very involved in North in the SEL team with Mr. Chiaramonti, and she absolutely loved it. What they teach these kids is to be part of the team. Everybody is one of us. It doesn't matter if you're light, dark, neurodiverse, if you have a physical handicap, if you have a social handicap, we're all one team. We're the SACHM team. We need to remember that. That's what's being taught in the schools, and maybe some parents don't understand that. There's a lot that's going on outside this district. That's not what's going on here. So as I said before, I implore parents to have this discussion with their kids and hold themselves to a higher standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanders. Dakota Benedetto?
Hello, my name is Dakota, and I am an incoming 7th grader at Seneca. From the time we were little, we were always taught about having choices. And since March of 2020, we the kids haven't had much choice to make. However, if I did have a choice, I would choose not to wear my mask ever. I suffered from frequent nosebleeds, and almost every day I got off the bus, I would have to take Advil for my reoccurring headaches. I was in 5th grade when COVID started. I missed out on a normal 5th grade graduation and end of the year trips that I have been looking forward to since kindergarten. I received the 2020 County Executive Public Service Award for raising money to send food to nurses and hospital workers during the height of the pandemic, and I couldn't even receive my reward in person. I had to receive my acknowledgement over a YouTube video and a drive-by. Everybody in power seems to be so demanding that we sit at our desks in a mask for a virus with a 99.9973% survival rate in children 0 to 19 years old, yet don't consider our social and emotional state being important. I know you all have to follow the rules put out by the CDC and our governor. However, please continue to fight for us to have a choice of wearing a covering over our face all day and being able to breathe.
Great job, Dakota. Kimberly Sirico Hamel?
Good evening. Okay, so I hate speaking in public, but I heard that if you're shaking when you're talking, that means God's trying to shake the truth out of you. So I wrote this before you guys presented your information tonight. I wanted to present a ton of irrefutable literature tonight. However, I feel like I would be wasting my time. This board has heard it all. I know most, if not all, know what the literature says. You know there should be a parent choice. You know how scared You know how scared a few are and how angry many are. And I'm sure this board thinks they have to meet us somewhere in the middle. But what hasn't been discussed and should have been discussed a year ago still has to do with masks, proper masking. I know masks do not work in the prevention of transmission of SARS-CoV-2. Bear with me. Most of all, the district should have committed to designing education for all teachers, staff, and students surrounding proper masking and personal health. There has been no communication to the community regarding this life-saving education. Masking is known to healthcare professionals as a part of PPE, in which OSHA evaluates, educates, and regulates. For instance, every day I come into contact with community members that truly have no idea how dangerous wearing a cloth mask is, or how expensive it is to provide enough disposable masks for an entire family for one day of work in school. That masks should be worn no longer than 1 to 2 hours, that there should be a biohazard bin in every area masks are mandated. We are talking about supposed deadly virus, aren't we? Shouldn't there be constant education on how to use a disposable mask and then dispose of it? Rather than hang it around your neck, put it in your pocket, or lay it on a desk. Does anyone realize that these unlawful mandates over a supposed deadly virus seem to mandate measures that are placing our teachers, staff, and students' overall health at a higher risk of illness? If the board knows this, then why haven't we taken the damn COVID relief money, hire an attorney, and fight back against what's really killing people? My number one concern today is that if this district can allow the Department of Health or whoever to walk all over our school over unlawful masks, how is it we can trust the district to stop those same entities from barging into our schools and injecting our kids with experimental, life-threatening shots without parental knowledge or consent? It is coming. By the way, did you know that there are no shots available that stop the spread of this virus? There are not licensed shots available in the United States. Many Americans have been... It's 3 minutes already? Okay. It's called, can I have 2 seconds, 10 seconds?
You can wrap up.
I'm up?
Yep, wrap up. You can wrap up.
Okay, thank you. There are no licensed shots available in the United States. Many Americans have been deceived. What's been licensed in the U.S. is a shot called Commonality, which is not available. So the same shots that have killed over 200,000 Americans are still full court press ahead. mRNA shots are gene therapies, not traditional vaccines. I'm going to stop it there. I had more, but thank you.
Thank you. Dreshta Bogra. I think. Did I get it right? Am I close?
Yeah, Dreshta Bogra.
Good.
Okay, so my name is Dreshta Bogra. I am going into 10th grade this year at North. I am worried about how often I might have to be quarantined. I have APs and regions coming up that I don't want to sit at home and learn through Google Classroom, because from last year, that was not as effective as going into school every single day. Second, masks work when everyone use them. I want to reiterate that. It doesn't work if I'm the only one using it in my entire class, and I hope you guys will continue to be supportive of the mask mandate for those of you who are. Masks don't prevent transmission, but they do reduce it, and the same goes with the vaccine. So I would encourage everyone to wear masks and get the vaccine. And last, a lot of people have used quotes from the Bible. One is love thy neighbor, and to me that means protecting my neighbor. So I would encourage everyone to wear their mask. Everyone to wear their mask so we can go back to normal. I mean, this is a global pandemic. This is like not just the books I'm reading about diseases and post-apocalyptic worlds. I am in that world and I want it to go back to normal. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank Keenly? "50-50, I'm wrong."
Kinley.
It was either the E or the I. I know.
The same thing last month. It's all right. Don't worry about it.
Next time.
I wanted to speak on the efficacy of masks. My previous task at my current employer was an asbestos handler, and it was a 32-hour course to become certified, and you had to pass a respirator test, a positive, negative pressure respirator test for fitting, because you're going to be entering into a regulated environment where friable asbestos is a real concern for obvious health reasons. Now, friable asbestos is way bigger than aerosolized respiration. It's not even close. And every year you have to be recertified and be fit tested for this respirator. If you walk in with stubble, a little bit of hair on your face, they kick you right out of the class. If that silicone rubberized face mask does not fit your face perfectly and there's no air seepage or air leakage, you don't pass. So there's no way that these masks are able to protect our kids in the way that everyone thinks that they can. I mean, we as adults fidget with our mask all day long. I see people walking around like they just made an Amish fireplace with beards with masks on their face. You're not protecting yourself. Nothing's happening there. You might feel good inside that you're doing something for everybody around you, but you're not saving yourself or the person next to you. I'm sorry. Now, to the point that was made before by the board, how can we make a reasonable assessment of everything when the Suffolk County Department of Health isn't stratifying the actual people getting infected? How do we know that the masks are actually helping our kids and protecting our kids if the numbers don't reflect who's getting sick, who is getting COVID? So how can you say that masks are actually working without the actual data to support the claim that it's working? And I'm telling you, as a person who actually worked around asbestos, who had to get certified, had to wear the mask properly, you have to realize that regular masks don't do what you think they do. And to mandate it is completely egregious. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Chris Clayton, I just want to ask a question before we take action here. Is it, and I know that there was debate and we stopped it over email because I think it's important to do it here, but is it truly necessary for us to vote on this plan? My question is only, and I'll let you finish, I apologize. If we're not able to say no, barring the schools shutting down and barring, a fine or a certification, basically we're being told that we can't say no. What's the point of voting at all?
Look, the school reopening plan that has been promulgated by Dr. Pelletieri is much broader than the mask mandate, right? I mean, let us make it clear that right now the mask mandate has the force of law. I know that there is many times discussion about, hey, it's just guidance and you don't have to pay attention to it, but it's authorized by the public health law. The Commissioner of Health is authorized by the public health law. The steps necessary to give him the authority to do what he did on August 27th of 2021 were undertaken. And I would say to you that at this point, absent some overturning of it, that mandate does have the force of law. So I agree with you that the plan promulgated to the extent that there is a mask mandate, that's not a local determination. That's not something that you guys are imposing. That is something that is imposed upon us by authorities that have been, by public health authorities that have been empowered to do it. But the plan is broader than that. And I've taken the position consistently that it's something that's, again, while it may be something you can't change, that the plan as a whole is something that requires a vote of the board to approve.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion for the reopening plan?
And again, in the discussion, you have every opportunity to say, look, I'm not voting on this because I support masks or anything like that. If that's your feeling, maybe it's just a matter of the fact that that's been imposed. It's a mandate. Basically, you're voting to say we're going to uphold the law, which is something that you take an oath to do.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Motion by Mr. Scavo, seconded by Mr. Reynolds. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm going to abstain, Allison. I just honestly, I don't even think it's a point for us to vote at all, but that's just my opinion. Good. The next meeting will be on Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021, back in the regular boardroom. Can I have a motion and a second to enter into executive session for collective negotiations discussing personnel matter and matters related to a particular student? Motion by Mr. Reynolds, seconded by Mr. Baumann. All in favor? Good night, everyone.